All right. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back from hopefully what is a great lunch or was a great lunch. Super stoked to get rocking and rolling. No Slayer while you wait. New shirt. Yes. In all fairness, I have to point this out. So yes, we had our first official wardrobe change. However, this wardrobe change was due to me spilling some of my lunch on my prior shirt. And so in all fairness, this was not an official wardrobe change. But there you go. And so, okay. So we are going to rock and roll. I also apologize for in South Florida. It's storming here and we are notorious for losing power. And so the storm is passing though, so we should be okay. But that's why those of you who had to log back on, we got cut off, had to wait for the power to come back on, all that jazz. But we are back in action. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right over here. I'm going to share my screen and we are going to, it's snowing, not quite snow, Edward. It's probably 85 degrees outside here. And so, let me see here. So yeah, you guys are so funny. All right. So we are going to now go into research and decisions. And so I just want to make sure, as always, you guys can see my screen. A-okay. Yes. Cool. Awesome. And so we're going to talk about research questions that you need to answer before you start writing and decisions to be made. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the morning session, I'm not going to go into, every single detail here as it relates to research and decisions. I felt the need to include this in here, as well as some of the other foundational principles, because so much of what we're going to be talking about tomorrow is based on stuff that we identify and uncover and get from this process. So keep in mind as I go through this, that if there are specific questions that you have deeper than what it is that I'm covering here, if it's an urgent question, you could pop it into the little Q&A section. If not, hold it for Monday and I will answer it. I want to give you a strong, though, overview of the essentials of the research and decision making here. And I'm going to start off with this, and I say this time and time again every time I talk about research or examination. Examination is step one of stage number one of the E5 method. Examination is the least enjoyable part of the campaign copywriting engineering process. It's the most tedious, it's the least fun, but it's where the gold is found. At the end of the day, most of what it is that we come up with in terms of ideas, hooks, themes, angles, pain points to alleviate, benefit statements to make, come from the research phase, come from the examination phase. In other words, the reality is that very little comes from within here for you. It's all out there. Granted, we're going to put stuff into your head. We're going to talk about developing ideas and all that kind of stuff in just a little bit, but it's all in the research. It's all in really what you understand about the marketplace, the environment that we're about to go into, or that we're going to be speaking to. You have to understand something, and this is really important, that you're not talking to a blank canvas when you are talking to a prospect. In other words, they're not coming into your campaign as a blank canvas. They're coming into your campaign with existing fears, concerns, desires, ambitions, emotions, as well as beliefs, experiences, viewpoints, and all of that stuff. Kind of it impacts the way that they receive and process your message. And so you need to understand who you are talking to and what their perspective is, what they've seen, what they haven't seen, what they heard, what they haven't heard. It really all begins, as you've heard me say already, with the prospect. And so this is critical, not fun, but critical, necessary, right? Like essential to what it is that you do. And I'll tell you that the best copywriters in the world were all and are all research fiends, research fanatics. The majority of their time especially when they're writing campaigns for new products, for things in a new marketplace, not their own stuff. The majority of their time is invested into the research and examination, right? Not the writing. Everything you need to know to be able to craft a compelling message starts with the research. And so with that, let's talk about the examination triad. And so I'm going to sum this up very quickly because this is covered in tremendous detail in the E5 method stuff here. That's a great way to put it, Lynn. Excuse me. The gold is elsewhere, and we're just prospectors who know what gold looks like and how to shape it. You're absolutely right. That is so well said. And so we are just looking for it. It's out there. There are three things that we look at. There are three things that we examine, and we examine them in this specific order. So the first one is prospects. And I'm going to break down and give you kind of a high level overview of exactly what it is that we're looking for when we are examining prospects. But we start with the prospects. This is your audience. This is who you are talking to in your marketing campaign. After we do the examination on prospects, then we go over to competitors. And we're going to talk about the two areas that we look at when we look at competitors. There are really two core things that we are going to use for the crafting of our copy. And then after we've examined prospects and then competitors, then we go over and we examine the product. Now, when I say examine the product, I'm talking about, yes, even your own product. You're writing for your own stuff, your own product, your own course, your own training, your own agency, whatever it may be. We're still going to go through the examination stage as if you were a consultant brought in, as if you were a copywriter brought in to write copy for somebody else's product. So just because it's your own, I don't want you to assume that you know everything that you need to know, that you're aware of everything that you need to be aware of. You still need to go through the full examination process for the product. So we do it in this order: 1, 2, 3. So let's talk about the prospects. So giving you this high level overview. So of ultimately what it is that we are looking for. We're looking for, number one, problem identification. In other words, we want to identify the problem that they have, or the problems that they have that we can solve. And we want to look at which is the most pressing problem, which is the most urgent problem, which is tied with the most amount of need, the most severity. And ideally, that's the one that we're going to go after. But we start by identifying what is the problem that we are going to solve. So what is the problem that the prospect has, that they see that they have, that they're aware that they have, that they want to resolve on whatever level that we're going to solve for them. So you got to start by identifying the problem that they have, that they know they have, that we're going to solve for them in our copy. Next is we have to identify their wants and desires. And what I mean by this in this particular context is, as it relates to the problem, what do they want to see happen? What is the ideal solution that they're looking for? What is the outcome, the transformation, the result that they're looking for? What do they want to be experiencing that they're not experiencing right now? What are they experiencing right now that they don't want to be experiencing after their problem is resolved? And so we have to identify or understand at least what are their wants and their desires. We have to know this. You have to know this because right off the bat, you should see that, right? How do you craft a compelling marketing message? How do you craft compelling copy if you don't know the problem that your prospect has, that they want solved, that you can solve? And how do you know what it is to say in your copy, or what do you say in your copy if you don't know the wants and desires that your prospect has? At the end of the day, remember, you heard me say this, right? And I want to drive this home. I want you to get this. At the end of the day, ultimately what we're doing is we're really, again, we're telling them that we've got a different and superior way to solve their problem, to give them the wants and desires that they have so that they can feel the way that they want to feel. Right? That's ultimately what we're doing. And so unless we know what it is that the problem is, unless we know their wants and desires, unless we know the emotions that they currently have and ultimately what they want to have, well, how do we know that we're going to resonate with them? As it relates to emotions and feelings, there are two things that we're ultimately looking for here under this. So as it relates to the problem, what are the emotions and feelings that they can have? right? Like, what are the emotions and feelings that they have? And what I would tell you in this context, just to kind of go a little bit deeper here, is don't get so caught up in, have I named the exact emotion? Like, is it anxiety? Is it, is it disappointment, or is it disappointment, or is it frustration? There are so many gray areas in terms of emotions. There's so many emotions that kind of cross over, that blend in together. It's not this black and white emotional profile that your prospects have. Really, what I want you to kind of come to is it a negative emotion? Like, or is it more negative bent? Is it more fear based, or is it more hope based? Is it more greed based? Is it more kind of positive, right? What are the emotion? What's the emotion that they have coming into the campaign? So as it relates to the problem, is it an unfulfilled desire and they're hopeful, they're excited, they're ambitious, they're greedy, so to speak? Or is it more of this unresolved distress where they're concerned, they're scared, they're anxious, they're frustrated, that sort of thing? And so I want to understand what the emotions are that they have, and like, what's the core emotion? How would I sum up the core emotion that they're experiencing right now? Don't be so concerned with, like, how do I know if it's, again, disappointment or frustration? Like, it's not about being able to name the exact emotion. It's about understanding the overall emotional state that they are in. And then, of course, you want to have an understanding of, well, what are the emotions that they'll experience and that they want to experience after they experience their wants and desires. So when the problem is solved and alleviated, and they're experiencing the benefits, the outcomes, the result, the transformation, the change, all of that, and all the ancillary benefits that come with that big overarching change, how are they going to feel, right? And so we want to understand that. Now, you can look at these three just right off the bat, and you could start to recognize, of course, in what it is that I just said, that it's important to understand both sides of the equation so that we can present and provide contrast, right? Like, in other words, another way to think about this, and this is something that I talk about in E5 coaching, is the before, the now and after state. So right now they're dealing with the problem. And dealing with their problem, their life looks a certain way. They're experiencing certain things. They're not experiencing certain things. What it is that they're experiencing or not experiencing is making them feel a certain way. It's causing pain, certain pain points for them, right? That's where they are right now. They have this overall emotional state about the now state. And then there's the after, right? And the after is post problem being solved. So after the problem is being solved, after the problem is solved or relieved, now what does their life look like? What is part of their life? What pain don't they have anymore? What pleasure do they have? All of those things. And how do they now feel, right? After. How do they feel? So we've got this now state, and then we've got this after state. All right. And in the middle is the problem being solved. That understanding that what it is that I just said is where the contrast comes from. The contrast comes from, you're dealing with this right now. You no longer have to deal with this. You no longer have to experience X. You no longer have to be frustrated by Y, because you'll experience LMNOP, all this good stuff. Darkness, light, darkness, light, darkness, light, contrast. This is where it comes from. And again, in order to convey that we've got the right solution for them, we need to understand these things. You also need to understand any potential beliefs that they have that could color the message. In other words, that can taint the message that you give them. Remember, you're not dealing with a blank canvas. In some markets, in some instances, there are certain beliefs that the market has that is important to recognize. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples in just a second. You have to recognize, are there any beliefs that if I immediately disagree with them could cause them to view me as not being credible? Are there any beliefs that if I contradict them early on could cause them to say he or she doesn't know me? They don't understand. They're not me. They're not one of me. They don't get me. They're not right. This is not like, there's a disconnect here. Is there any belief that they have that if I contradict early on could make them say, wrong, absolutely wrong? off the mark. And so let me give you an example. So one of my clients is the Agora companies, and I've worked with a number of different affiliates over the years, or different entities over the years, and in the majority of the affiliates, the majority of folks, the avatar, and I kind of hate using the term because of the connotation that comes with it, but the avatar, their audience was really made up largely of 55 plus year old white men who are conservative politically, right? They used to refer at Agora Financial to their avatar as Grandpa Kurt. And they used to have this little doll that to represent who they were talking to. Well, you know, right off the bat that they're talking to primarily conservative, politically conservative people that, right, for the most part, right, wrong, or indifferent, dislike the Clintons, dislike Obama, dislike Biden, blah, 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 blah. And so if we opened up a campaign, a financial campaign, talking about how great, you know, the Clintons are now making a move that's going to allow us to profit in a big way. And we're positioning the Clintons as great, you know, valuable, blah, 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 blah. Well, we're going to go against their belief. We're going to immediately butt up against this perception that they have that that's bad. I don't want anything to do it. Like, if you tell me how to exploit their wealth, if you tell me how to get over on them, if you tell me how to capitalize on an opportunity because of their mistake, now I'm in. But if you try to align me with them, I'm out. Same thing with the alternative health space. The deeper you go into the alternative health space, the more belief there is, again, right, wrong, or indifferent, that the pharmaceutical industry is evil, right? Is evil. This is where it becomes like the common enemy, you know, like is evil, is bad. And so if we say something early on, like this is, you know, this is thanks to the hard work that the people over at Johnson & Johnson did. Well, boom, they're immediately like, no, not good. Those are bad. Those people are bad. Right. And so, but if we opened up with more of, let's say, just as an example, the idea that here's an opportunity to, you know, to leverage, you know, one of the evil patents that Pfizer has to get the natural remedy that you need for gout or whatever. Now they're interested, right? Because they see those folks as bad. Same thing. You could go into general, you know, into other markets and know that there are little beliefs that you just have to be aware of in some spaces, like attorneys are shady, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? Like that's, some people have that, you know, belief. You don't necessarily think of attorneys and immediately think of the most ethical people, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just this thing. Some people think of, there are folks that think, you know, chiropractic, and they think of chiropractor, they think of painful or risky or not a legitimate doctor or something like that. And so my point in sharing that with you is you just have to be aware of, are there beliefs that I need to be aware of so that I don't contradict them? Are there beliefs that I need to make sure I don't contradict? And are there beliefs that I can leverage, that I can use to show the prospect, right? But that we're the same, that we feel the same way without coming out and saying we feel the same way? Are there beliefs that I need to be aware of that we can use in the campaign to show them, I get you. We're on the same team. We feel the same way. We have the same worldview, right? Because that's important. You have to understand that, you know, people like to spend money with people that they like and trust, and people like people that are like them. And so, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? People like people that are like them. And so, right, like depending on your stance on the vaccine, yay or nay, if you were yay and somebody was really outspoken, and it came through outspoken against it, and they were, you know, blah, 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 you may be a lot less inclined to buy. And same thing on the other side of the coin. And so my point is, you're not dealing with a blank canvas. You've got to recognize who is the individual that I'm talking to? What are their wants and desires, right? What's the problem that I'm going to solve for them? What are the emotions and feelings that they have coming in here? What are the emotions and feelings that they ultimately want to have that they're likely buying through the wants and desires? And what are, if any, the beliefs that they have that could impact what it is that I say, or how they view what it is that I say? And then finally, and this one we could also spend a whole bunch of time on, but we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time on, is awareness level. And awareness level really originates from Eugene Schwartz in Breakthrough Advertising. I've said it before, Breakthrough Advertising is the absolute best marketing book ever published. It's the only book in the library that I have 2 copies of. And this was prior to my buddy Brian Kurtz, republishing the book when it was, selling for $700 or $800 or whatever it was. I picked up a second copy just in case something happened to my first copy. But Gene Schwartz talks about awareness levels. And this goes back to, there are 5 levels of awareness. Awareness in this context is how aware is your prospect, the people that you're talking to, the segment of your market that you're talking to. How aware are they of the problem, and how aware are they of the different types of solutions out there, and you and your solution, and so on? Because their awareness level is going to determine how we open up, how we begin to engage with them, right? And so for time purposes, I'll give you this quick breakdown that there are 5 levels of awareness. At the bottom is unaware. At the top is most aware. Think of unaware as they're not, the problem isn't top of mind for them. They're not aware of a problem. They're not thinking about the problem, and therefore they're not looking for a solution. And then one level up, you've got problem aware. Problem aware are the people that are aware that they have a problem, but they haven't yet decided on a solution. They're not aware of maybe which is the best course of action to take. So let's say let's say in South Florida, got a lot of an older population down here, a lot of older guys that golf. There's golf courses everywhere you go. They golf and they've got no back pain, and therefore they're not looking for a back pain solution. Then you've got one level up, right? And that is guys got back pain. Golf is one of the worst things for lower back. You've got flexion and rotation at the same time, no good. And so, right. So now you got some guys with back pain, and all they are is aware they got back pain. They're not yet aware of the different solutions. They haven't looked into the different solutions. They haven't chosen a solution that they want, or a category of solution, or anything like that. They're just aware that they've got low back pain. Then one level up, you've got solution aware. And these are people that are now, they're aware that they've got low back pain, and they're now starting to look at, do I want to go to a chiropractor, or do I want to go to a massage therapist? And so they're trying to decide between the solution options, right? And so back pain, chiropractor, massage, which is better, which is safer, which is easier, which is quicker, which is cheaper, whatever. And then one level up, you've got product aware. And product aware is, all right, I know I got back pain. I know the different solutions out there, the options out there. I want to go to a chiropractor. And now I am looking for the best chiropractor in West Palm Beach, Florida. Right. And so that's product aware. I've chosen the product category, and now I'm looking for the best option within that category. And then one level up is most aware. So unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, most aware. Your market is made up of everybody in that pyramid. That is your universe, right? That is your universe. So that right, it's not a matter of which one of those is your market. It's a matter of that pyramid, people in that pyramid at those 5 different levels of awareness make up your marketplace. Now it's a matter of understanding, who are you going to be targeting? Who are you going to be targeting? What level of awareness are you going to be targeting? Are you going to go after the unaware segment, the guys that are 55, 65, 70 years old plus, that are golfing, that don't have any back pain, and now you're going to try to make them aware of, let's say, your back is at risk, and blah, 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 blah. Or are you going to talk to the people that do have pain, they're problem aware, and that's it? They haven't decided yet between different solutions. Are you going to talk to the guys that are, or the gals that are, they've got back pain, now they're solution aware, they're debating between chiropractic and massage, let's just say? Are you going to talk to the people that they've decided they want chiropractor, and now they're going to look for the the best chiropractor in your area, you have to decide what level of awareness you are going to go after, because that's going to change the copy that we write, because we have to start where the prospect is. You have to understand what they're aware of, what they know, what they think, what they've already accepted, what they already believe as true as it relates to the problem and the solutions out there, to know where to begin. Right? To know where to begin. And you're going to see this carried over tomorrow when we talk about different ways of opening up the campaign. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, but you have to know their awareness level. Again, the better you can know your prospect, the easier this game of copy becomes. You have to be able to speak their language. You have to be able to speak to where they're at right now, what they see right now, what they believe right now, what they're thinking right now, what they're aware of right now. You have to know what they know, what they don't know, what they've already accepted, what they haven't accepted, right? And so it's a matter of choosing which one of those 5 levels of awareness you are going to target. Once you've decided that, and there's pluses and minuses to depending on where you go, right? Like the higher on the pyramid you go, the easier it becomes to convert. The smaller the universe, though, the lower on the pyramid you go, the harder it is to convert. But the bigger the universe, there's a lot of different elements in here that I talk about in E5 coaching. But for now, I just want you to understand that there are different levels of awareness, and you need to know what they are. And you need to know which one you are ultimately going to target, because it's going to change the way we present our copy, what we say and where we say it and how we say it. Now, as it relates to the prospect problem, this goes back to a question I cannot remember, and I apologize for that somebody asked earlier. Or somebody mentioned earlier about, and I said it is, I mentioned that it was assuming the known cause. And so I want you to listen to me here, because this is going to, this should be extremely valuable for you guys. Oh, David. Okay, awesome. And so the symptom versus the problem. So you want to avoid the mistake of assuming the known cause. And what this really means, or what this is based on, is this: that most prospects think the symptoms are the problem. Most prospects are not aware of what the actual underlying problem is. So when most prospects think of the problem, what most prospects associate with the problem are the symptoms, not the actual underlying root cause. And so that's an important point for you to understand. And let me say it again, that most prospects, when they think of the problem, they are really thinking of the symptoms of the problem, not the underlying problem itself. They're not thinking about the root cause. They're thinking about the symptoms, because to most prospects, and I want you to listen to me, most prospects don't know the root cause. They just know the symptom. And so the mistake of assuming the known cause is when a marketer in their copy tries to talk about alleviating the problem, but what the copywriter or marketer does is they talk about the root cause. So, right, they in the headline, they'll talk about like the root cause, how to alleviate the root cause, or how to fix the root cause, assuming that the prospect knows that that's their problem. But to the prospect, their problem is the symptoms. Most prospects do not know the root cause. And so you, as a marketer, have to resist that. You have to be aware of that. You've got to recognize that, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. I think there's a slide that I included in here. I didn't take it out on avoiding the curse of knowledge. You may understand that that's a symptom, that it's coming from an underlying root cause. And therefore, what you want to do is you want to say to the prospect in your copy, here's how to solve this root cause. But to the prospect, that's a disconnect, because in their mind, they don't even see that as a problem. They're not even aware, right? What they associate as the problem is the symptoms. What we want to present to them when we talk about solving their problem, what we want to focus on are the symptoms, not the root problem. not the root problem. Don't assume that your prospect knows the root problem. Assume that they consider the problem the symptoms, or the symptoms the problem. And so we want to focus on symptoms, and we want to focus on the pain from the symptoms, not the root problem. That is critical. I know that this is only one slide, but it is essential because I see this mistake made all the time, right? And so you look at, let's say, something like the E5 method, right? And you take something like, let's say, the big marketing idea, and excuse me, and the big marketing idea solves the attention problem, let's say, how to get attention, getting attention in a marketplace. Well, the mistake would be, right, and we know, let's say, let me take a step back and say that the reason why majority of people don't get attention in their marketplace, why they can't get clicks on ads, why they can't get emails opened and that sort of thing, let's say, right, is because they've got a weak, run-of-the-mill, ordinary idea, hook, or theme for their campaign, right? And so to us, fixing the problem is how to make sure that you have a big marketing idea, or how to make sure you don't have a weak, run-of-the-mill, ordinary marketing idea. But that is the root cause. That's not what the prospect sees as their problem. The prospect doesn't know that that is the cause of a lack of attention. To the prospect, the lack of attention, the lack of clicks on ads, the lack of engagement on their ads, the lack of traffic to their site, that is the problem. And so when we are starting our copy and we're addressing the problem up front, we want to address the symptoms, not the root cause. Now, you'll see that we can always go into the root cause in the copy, right? When we explain how we're going to solve the problem, right? Like how we're going to solve the problem, or the symptoms that the prospect sees, right? That we can, in the copy, we can explain to them that this problem really comes from this cause. And when you solve this cause, right, then you alleviate this problem. And here is the best, most effective way to solve this root cause. And when you solve this root cause with this best, most effective way, you get the attention, you get the blah, 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 you get the engagement, you get the clicks, you get the visitors, and you ultimately get the sales, right? And so we can address the root cause, which we're going to talk about in just a second, as a matter of fact, in your copy. But when it comes to getting attention, when it comes to early on in the campaign, conveying to the prospect that we're going to solve, I have a different way to solve your problem, we don't jump to the root cause. We start where the prospect is at, which is the symptoms. To your prospect, the symptoms are the problem. So when you talk about solving their problem, you talk about solving their symptoms, right? You're not going to use the word symptoms early on. You're going to talk about, this is how to solve this. This is how to overcome this, the symptom or symptoms that they're dealing with. And that's a very important distinction. This is a mistake that I see made all the time. You cannot get too close, to the topic. Remember, you heard me say early on, you've got to learn to step away. You've got to learn to step away, and you've got to learn to see through your prospect's eyes. Everything is about what they see, what they believe, what they feel, what they think. It's not what you know, it's what they know. It's not what you think, it's what they think. It's not what you believe, it's what they believe. All the things that you think, believe, are motivated by, feel, experience are meaningless, absolutely meaningless. It's only about the prospect. Next is there, and this is a more advanced strategy that you're going to hear me, that we're going to talk a little bit about tomorrow. But this is there an unaddressed root problem which your solution resolves? An unaddressed root problem. So what do I mean by an unaddressed root problem? So an unaddressed root problem is, the way that I would define this is, it is the real underlying reason or cause of the superficial problem that's being focused on. And so meaning, like, ultimately what we're talking about here is there a deeper underlying problem that others in the marketplace, competitors, other products, other vendors aren't addressing. They're not dealing with this real underlying root problem. And this real underlying root problem is the true cause of the symptoms, right? The quote unquote root cause, or the superficial root cause that people are dealing with, is still one step away from the real underlying root cause, or the unaddressed root problem. And so, right, like what we're ultimately looking for is there a root problem, a real root problem that nobody else in the marketplace is addressing, that you could present in your copy as, right, like this is the real problem that you are having. And right, and unless you solve this problem, right, that you will never alleviate the symptoms, you'll never alleviate the pain. While most people are, right, most people are trying to fix these symptoms, right, with this, right? But the real problem is this. It's almost like, let me give you an example. I'm going to give you a couple of quick examples. Actually, let me give you a couple of quick examples, and then we'll unpack this a little bit. So I have a client, a client who has a memory supplement, right? It helps with memory, and successful supplement dude, and he shows how memory decline is really the cause of a toxin that is found in multiple households. And that toxin has been proven to be directly linked to declining memory. And right, all of the other courses of action that you might want to take to help with your memory won't do anything if you are still plagued by this toxin in your, which gets into your brain, right? Like, and it goes through like a crazy amount of proof, blah, 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 blah. And so that's an example of an unaddressed root problem, right? Where others are talking about maybe you're lacking nutrients, maybe this, he's saying that no, like the real issue, the real unaddressed root problem is this toxin. And here's evidence and more evidence and more evidence and more proof and more evidence and more support. And unless you get rid of this toxin, right, from your brain, you will continue to see memory decline. Fortunately, there's a way to get rid of this toxin, and here it is, and here's how it works, and here's why it works, and boom, here's an offer for you to get it. And so, right, here's another thing. There is low testosterone. Right, so low testosterone. So there are a lot of, check this out. This should unpack it a little bit more. And then I'm going to give you a deeper example that you can relate to. So there are a lot of people that talk about you may, let's say you're a male, 45 years old or something like that. And so, and you're struggling to build muscle tissue. Well, there are a lot of products out there that talk about the cause, the reason why is low testosterone. And here is a way for you to boost your testosterone naturally. And when you boost your testosterone naturally, here's what happens, right? And here's the benefit of testosterone, right? And so now other people can come along and they can say, yeah, you know, it's low testosterone. We have a different way to boost low testosterone, or a better way to boost low testosterone, or, you know, something like that. But then there's this opportunity, and I want you to envision that this is real. So like this is truthful, and this all comes about through research and examination. So I'm not making anything up here. I'm using this as an example. But there could be evidence out there that shows that it's not low testosterone that is a problem for many men 45 plus, but it is poor cellular uptake, meaning it is the body, the male body, many male bodies tend to become resistant to testosterone as they get older, meaning that it's quite possible you could have a normal testosterone or low testosterone, and simply boosting your testosterone isn't going to fix the problem, because the real underlying root problem is poor cellular uptake of testosterone. And by the way, I just made up poor cellular uptake, right? I have no idea what that means. But right, once you fix poor cellular uptake, once you make the cells more sensitive to testosterone, not only does your testosterone level go up, but even with a lower testosterone level, your body will become more sensitive to testosterone and will reap the benefits of testosterone, therefore allowing you to right? And so the point is that when you have the ability to identify the problem, and then you have the ability to find the unaddressed root problem when there is, and you can't always do this. Like, not every one of you is going to be able to do this, but when you can do this, you've got something, you've got the makings of something potentially great. Because what you're ultimately saying is you're dealing with all these symptoms. You've got all this problem. Most people are going to tell you that this is the problem, but this isn't the problem or the real problem. This is what's causing this, which is leading to this. And here's all the evidence to show you that this is the real problem. And only when you solve this problem, right, do you reap the rewards. And I have a way for you to solve this problem. Here's what it's called. Here's how it works. And here's how you can get it. Now you've created something. That is money. And as a little tease, as a little taste, what you've ultimately done is now you've turned the solving of the unaddressed root problem into a necessity, into a need, not an option. Now you've almost said, right, unless you fix this, nothing else is going to work. Unless you fix this, you could still work on this, right? And you could fix this one part, right? And it doesn't matter. A great example of this is in the world of media buying. When there are a lot of people that say, like they'll talk about, you have a high CPA, right? And so you have a high CPA. Let me show you a different way, a better way to create your ad, high cost per acquisition. And let me show you a better way or a different way to create your ads, right? And I'm going to show you a better way to drive traffic, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is that in most cases, right, it's not the traffic. Like, the reality is they can come up with a better way to drive traffic, a better way to create ads, a different platform to create ads and run ads. That's not the real root problem. The real root problem is that they have an ineffective marketing message, which doesn't convert at a high enough rate. And that's what's causing the high CPA. So while you can improve your ads and find additional platforms, right, and do all those things and scale up your traffic more and more, you're still going to struggle until you fix the underlying real root cause, the unaddressed root problem. And until you fix the unaddressed root problem, right, nothing else is going, everything else becomes a Band-Aid. And so you see how that's money in the bank, right? That's money in the bank when you understand that. And so a great example of this is my good buddy, Rich Schefren. And so those of you that have been around for many, many years may be familiar with, or are likely familiar with, the Internet Business Manifesto. So, Rich, I remember when Rich released this. So Rich released this PDF over a decade ago now. And so this PDF, it is a classic. You're absolutely right, Ken. So this PDF launched I believe it was, he launched his original coaching program, did about $3 million. And then over the next 10 months, did like another $7 million in his coaching program. This is this is over 10 years ago. And so it was a different environment than today. But the premise of this, and I want you to follow me here. The premise of this, the idea behind this PDF was about, he was talking to folks that were overwhelmed at the time with a whole bunch of marketing activities. So they were overwhelmed with the idea of starting to embrace social media, the beginning, of social media, and all this stuff, affiliate marketing, legal, compliance, technical content, right? Emails, list building, opt-in, PPC ads, name capture. You can see all the old stuff on here, customer service, fulfillment, testimonial acquisition, blogs, blah, 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 all this stuff. And people were overwhelmed. And what people thought was the problem was, they thought the game was, how do I learn to outsource? Like, how do I learn a system for getting all of this done? right? And so they were ultimately looking for, let's say, how do I outsource or freelance, or right? Like, how do I get all this stuff done? What is the most effective way? Because I'm becoming overwhelmed. I'm ready to throw in the towel on all this stuff. And what Rich said was, ultimately, he presented that that's not the issue. The issue isn't how do you get all of this stuff done. The issue is that you're trying to get all of this stuff done. And by the way, this might sound like, of course, this is normal stuff today. Back then it wasn't. It was unheard of, believe it or not. And he said the problem is that you are operating as an opportunity seeker when you should be operating as a strategic entrepreneur. When you operate as an opportunity seeker, here is what you do. You look for all different ways. You embrace all, ways to build your business, all different marketing strategies, all different marketing tactics. You seize every opportunity out there, every path, every platform, everything. You go after that. And the result is you feel overwhelmed. You feel blah, blah, blah. You're inundated. You got so much to do. You have a never ending to-do list, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got a strategic entrepreneur. And a strategic entrepreneur is somebody that, right, picks and chooses the right moves to make based on their business, based on their model, based on what it is that they are trying to build. And the result of that is X, Y, Z, is no overwhelm, is, a minimal to-do list, is a streamlined business, is a well-oiled machine, is something that's fast growing, and blah, 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 right? And so ultimately, now I want to take a step back for 1 second. Now check this out. Right? So what did Rich do? Number one, he identified the unaddressed root problem. It's not that you've got to figure out, the problem isn't that you've got too many things to do. The problem is that you're operating as an opportunity seeker when you need to be operating as a strategic entrepreneur. So he addressed a root problem that nobody else was talking about, that nobody else was addressing. Number two, that I want you to notice is that he provided contrast, right? And so overwhelm, filled with blah, 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 blah. Over here, right? Strategic entrepreneur, great, phenomenal, life is wonderful, unicorns, candy, rainbows, all that kind of jazz. Next thing, what did he do was he provided the logical support and evidence for that, right? Like he demonstrated, right? Like he demonstrated evidence support for that. The next thing that he did was identity, right? Like basically, who do you want to be? Do you want to be this opportunity seeker? Do you want to be this strategic entrepreneur? Which one more aligns with who you want to be, with how you want to see yourself, with how you want to be viewed? Right. And so, right. He tapped into this identity. Of course, there was the emotional appeal of no longer feeling overwhelmed, of seeing your business grow, of all that stuff. And then the final thing that I want you to understand, and this is where the real magic comes into play with the unaddressed root problem, is that Rich identified an unaddressed, and I want you to listen to me. Okay. Rich identified an unaddressed root problem that he was the only one that had a solution to. So in other words, when he said that your problem is not that, is not figuring out how to do all these things, but your problem is that you're functioning as an opportunity seeker, when the best of the best, the smartest, the most successful entrepreneurs, the ones that aren't feeling the way you are operating like strategic entrepreneurs. And then he got buy-in on that. He sold the prospect on that idea. Then in the end, he offered them the opportunity to become a strategic entrepreneur, to learn how to function as a strategic entrepreneur. And back then, he was the only one doing that. So he showed the marketplace, which is why it did so well. He showed the marketplace that, right, that the problem that they thought they had was just another symptom of the real underlying problem, that he then was the only one that could solve. And it did gangbusters, right? It worked like gangbusters. That's the power of an unaddressed root problem when you can identify it. You can't always identify it, right? But you certainly can spend time looking at your prospect's problems, or the problem that you feel you are going to solve for them, and then ask yourself, right, is there a reason or a cause underneath this? Is there, right? Is there a cause underneath this, right? And that your solution resolves, that we could then talk about, that nobody else is talking about, nobody else is addressing, right? So while a lot of people talk about, for example, with productivity, and they talk about having a time management system, a better way to do your to-do list, a better way to capture your projects, right? Somebody could come along and say that the issue isn't your productivity system. The issue is your mental baggage about productivity. And the reality is that until you identify and alleviate or remove your mental baggage as it relates to productivity, you're going to try all of the productivity systems in the world and you're still going to struggle. Fact is, once you eliminate your baggage, your mental baggage related to productivity, the reality is you could plug in almost any productivity system and you're going to be much more effective with it. And so what I'm going to show you how to do is how to eliminate very specific beliefs that become or are your productivity baggage so that you can blah, 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 blah. And so you see how like that there, but you have to dig for that. You have to look for that. You have to see, is there an unaddressed root problem that you can then leverage in your marketing? If so, great. If not, that's also a-okay. So you don't need an unaddressed root problem. Just if you can find one or identify one, then it can be enormously powerful. Next is, let's talk about competitors. So when you're looking at competitors, there's really only two main categories of things that we are looking at when we're examining competitors. Number one, I just want to know what hooks they're using, themes they're using, marketing ideas they are using. The reason why I want to know their hooks, their themes, their ideas is not because we want to knock it off, not because we want to model it, not because we want to use it, just the opposite. I want to know what our competitors are saying so I know what not to say, right? I want to know what not to say. I want to know, right? Because I want to know what has the market already heard, right? So that I don't duplicate that. I don't want to come into the market. I don't want you to go into the market, and I don't want you to say more of the same. You don't want to say more of the same. You don't want to take the same idea, the same hook, the same theme that somebody else is rolling with, and you don't want to roll it out into your market and just try to say it better. What I'm looking for is different. Remember, different gets attention. Better doesn't always get attention. And so I need to know what are the hooks, the themes, the marketing ideas that competitors are using or even have used recently so that I know what not to do. Then I want to understand what are their promises, the claims, the benefit statements that they are making. Now here, yes, we can model what it is that competitors are saying. So I want to look across the board at the folks that we're competing against. And I want to see what outcome are they promising? What result, what transformation are they promising? What are the benefit claims that they're making, right? And I really want to look for trends and commonalities across the board, right? Because a trend, a commonality, if I see multiple competitors making the same benefit claim, promising the same kind of outcome, the same kind of result, I'm going to note that. I'm going to use that to my advantage. And so I want to understand, I want to look for these trends, these commonalities with my competitors so that I can use them to my advantage. So hook, theme, marketing idea, we want to know that so we know what not to do. Promises, claims, benefits, we want to know that and look for the trends so we know what to do. Next is there any kind of unique selling proposition that they're using? Likely not, but I want to know it. Is there a unique mechanism? What are they claiming is the way that their product or service works to produce the result? The majority of your competitors won't even have any kind of unique mechanism. But if they do, I want to know it, right? I want to understand it, right? Because understand this, I've got to know the mechanisms that competitors are claiming so that when we develop a unique mechanism or identify our unique mechanism, I know that it's unique. If I don't know the mechanisms of competitors, how do I know if I have a unique mechanism or just a mechanism, right? Like maybe it's a mechanism and it's a common mechanism because I don't know what my competitors have and they have the same thing. And so I need to know what is it, if anything, that they are claiming is the reason why their product or service works. Next is I want to understand their offer components. So what you could say here is that if we do this, let's do this, how do I do this? 1 second. There we go. is that this is the marketing, right? And then this is the selling. So I want to know, I want to understand their marketing, what they're doing in their marketing to position, right? So the hook, themes, ideas. I want to know their promises, claims, benefits. I want to know, do they have a unique selling proposition? Do they have a unique mechanism? Remember, if we don't know what our competitors are doing, then how do we know how to position against that? How do we know how to differentiate if we don't know what competitors are saying, right? If we don't know, right? And what competitors are saying is ultimately what the marketplace is hearing, right? And so you heard me say, I want to bring something new. I want to bring something different. We're going to talk about that when we get to hooks and ideas in a bit, but right, I want to say something different. I want to bring something different to the market. I need to know what competitors are saying so that I know I've got something different. And then I want to understand their offer, because ultimately what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to put together a superior offer, an offer that is better than competitors, right? And so I didn't say cheaper, I said better, right? And so I need to know what it is that they are doing. And so that is competitors. Then with the product, we're going to look for very similar things. First of all, we're going to look to see, is there any kind of catalyst, like we talked about earlier, that is that makes this product, this approach, this, this system, this opportunity more valuable, more timely, more urgent? Is there anything going on with this product in the marketplace that the prospects are aware of that I can leverage in my copy? Is there a catalyst? Then I want to understand, right? We're going to talk about this. We're going to unpack these. I want to understand what's the hook, theme, marketing idea that we're going to roll with. What are the promises, claims, benefits that we could make? What is there a unique selling proposition? Likely not, but is there a unique benefit that we could offer? Is there a unique mechanism? And then what's the offer going to be, right? These are things that we need to understand up front, right? We need to understand up front. We need to make these decisions. You heard me say at the beginning of this section, this is research and decisions. These are part of the decisions. I'm going to show you the questions that we need to answer in just a second. These are decisions that we need to make before you write a single word of copy. Now, I want to unpack a couple of these a little bit more so you get the some of the nuances, right? I'm not going to fully unpack this. I'm not going to go into every single detail for you, because some of this carries over into marketing strategy, but I want to give you the stuff that is important to know from for a copywriting perspective. So let's talk a little bit about, you're going to hear me use the phrase primary promise. So oftentimes you will hear me use promise and benefits. Promise and benefits. I want you to think of promise as primary promise. And I want you to think of, right, we got two things. We got primary promise and benefits. And so what's the difference? Because ultimately they both could fall under the umbrella of benefits, things that improve the prospect's life, that alleviate their pain, things done to the prospect. But I want you to recognize that every marketing campaign, every piece of copy that you write in terms of a campaign has a primary promise. Primary promise is the chief result, outcome, or transformation, meaning it is the one overarching change, improvement, result that your prospect is looking for. So the difference between the primary promise, you need to understand this. You're going to see this carried over to tomorrow. What you need to understand is that the primary promise is the big overarching change. But from that big overarching change, and I'll give you an example in just a second, there will likely be a lot of smaller ancillary benefits that come with it. What I'm talking about here is what is the most valuable, most compelling, most sought after result that your prospect is looking to experience, that your product or service can deliver. So if we were talking about weight loss, if somebody was interested in losing, X amount of weight, 30 pounds of weight or whatever it is, 30 pounds of fat, well, right, that would be part of the big overarching primary promise. There's also lots of other benefits that they will experience when they lose 30 pounds, right? They'll sleep better at night. Their cholesterol will come down, better heart health, right? They'll gain more confidence. Maybe they'll have tendency to be more social. They'll have more energy. They won't feel the 5 o'clock dip. They won't have as much knee pain. All of those are benefits. all of those are beneficial, right? All of those are things that we're going to talk about, assuming that they're important to the prospect throughout our copy. But when it comes to the primary promise, you want to identify what is the one overarching change, transformation, or result that we are going to focus on. The one big payoff that means the most to your prospect as it relates to the problem that they have. And when forming the primary promise, number one is that promise of result. When you're thinking about what am I going to promise them? Because in every marketing campaign, right, is built in some form or fashion on the back of a promise of result. That promise of result needs to be what I call big, bold, and audacious, right? It needs to be a big promise. It needs to be an audacious promise. It needs to be an exciting result. If it's not big, if it's not bold, if it's not exciting, then your prospect isn't going to care. In other words, if we were marketing and selling a traffic generation program, right, and we talked about our promise was how to get an additional 11 visitors a week to your website, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters because the promise is insignificant. Right? Like it's insignificant. It doesn't matter. You could have testimonials. You could have a great offer, right? All that. But who cares about 11 more visitors a week? It's insignificant, right? To the average prospect. And so the promise, the result itself needs to be big enough, bold enough, and audacious enough. Next, though, it needs to be true and believable. And true and believable are not the same thing. Right. And so not everything that's true is believable and not everything that's believable is true. We certainly know that today. And so what you've got to recognize is that you want the biggest, boldest, most audacious promise of an outcome that you can make that is most compelling and most exciting to your prospect, that is also true and believable. And for believable, what I would say to you is that you've got evidence, support, proof to back it up, right? To back it up. But we want the biggest, boldest, most audacious claim that we can make that is true and believable because we can back it up with support, evidence, or proof. And so big, bold, audacious, true, and believable. Next, when you think of your promise, and you heard me say this earlier, and this is one of the most valuable lessons that I can share with you on this day. And then you're going to see how this is played out in the actual copy tomorrow. But right, a promise that is compelling is one that is specific, concrete, and tangible. It's not vague. Vague promises of result, vague promises of payoff mean nothing to prospects. They roll off your prospects back. It's lazy copy. It's the way the average marketer will write. They're either afraid to commit, they're afraid to narrow, or they just don't spend the time in uncovering, right, what the market really wants and what is the exact payoff that the market's craving that their product or service can deliver. But vague general claims, vague general promises are meaningless to your prospect. When you promise something, you want it to be specific. You want it to be concrete. You want it to be tangible. You want it to be something that they can see again in their mind's eye. And a great judge of this, right, is that it's measurable. And what I mean by measurable is that they can know with certainty when it's been experienced, like when it's been experienced. So you say to somebody, get a better night's sleep, right? Get a better night's sleep. What does that mean? What do I picture in my mind's eye? Right? How do I measure that? What do I measure that based on? Right? It's not specific enough. It's not concrete. It's not tangible. But if I said, right, sleep soundly, that you'll wake up refreshed at the crack of dawn without ever needing an alarm clock, right? Like now that's measurable, right? Because I can measure my actual experience against it. And it's that measurability that gives promises weight and impact. And that measurability only comes from specificity and concreteness. Specificity and concreteness. And so what you're looking for, right, is you are looking for a promise. You want to promise something that you can be specific. You're better off, like you heard me say earlier, you're better off narrowing it narrowing, like shrinking what it is that you are promising. Shrinking meaning narrowing the focus, getting more specific, and being able to promise something specific rather than something vague, right? So rather than you might be, a lot of marketers are afraid to say like, how to lose, lose 13 pounds of fat from your waist in the next 21 days. And I'm just using that as an example, right? What did I just say? Lose 13 pounds of fat in the next 2 weeks or 21 days from your waist. That is specific. A lot of marketers will say, well, I don't want to do that because there are a lot of people that I want to attract that they're not necessarily looking to lose just that amount of weight. They're not looking to just lose it from their waist. They're looking to lose a lot more. And so I just want to say something like reach your target, lose enough weight to reach your target weight loss goal, to reach your target weight loss goal. That's crap. That is garbage, right? Because it's vague, it's general. You cannot picture it in your mind's eye. How quickly will I lose it? Where will I lose it from? How much will I lose, right? Like that's garbage. That type of vague generality should not be anywhere in your copy. And so what you want is measurable. I'm going to be able to know in the next 21 days whether I lost 13 pounds of fat, I'm going to be able to know that. I'm going to be able to measure it. And so really important, like I said, your prospect must be able to envision in their mind's eye the promise that you are making. If they can't conjure it in their mind's eye, you are not specific enough. You're not using enough concrete language. And so the last thing that I'll say about the promise, and then I'm going to answer some questions that look like they came in, is that these are two great exercises. I talk about this in E5, so I don't need to go crazy deep in here, but these are two exercises that you can do to help get an understanding of what your primary promise should be. Number one, the magic wand technique, right? If you could wave a magic wand and you could grant your prospects anything in terms of the problem that they're dealing with, the problem that you're addressing, based on what it is that you know about your prospects, based on the examination and research, what is it that you would grant them? What is the result? What is the payoff? If you could wave a magic wand and there was one thing, right? You got to you can't say, lose weight to improve your heart health, to have more personality, and blah, 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 blah. You got to narrow it down. What is that result? What would they tell you? What would they ask you for, right? Like you could wave a magic wand and grant them one thing as it relates to the problem. Next is, the ideal client exercise, right? Imagine your greatest future success story. Take a client that is your greatest success story. Like imagine this into the future, whether you've got a new business, not like, what is the greatest success story? What would you consider the greatest success story? And what exactly are the results that client experienced, right? What did they experience? What happened? What changed? What was the transformation? Right? What was the result? This is where you, and I want you to listen to me. This is where you've got to, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. I've got this somewhere in here today, I believe, right? That you've got to sit back, thinking time. Thinking is one of the most valuable things that you can do for your business when it comes to marketing. Oftentimes sitting back, not in front of the computer, maybe with a yellow legal pad and a pen, and just sitting outside or sitting someplace that you don't normally sit. I have a chair over there in the office that I like to sit in. It looks out this window over here. And just thinking about knowing what I know about prospects. What do they want? Knowing what I know about prospects, what is their biggest concern right now? Knowing what I know about the prospects in the market, what's top of mind for them right now? What's going on in their head? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are they struggling with as it relates to what we do? If I could wave a magic wand and grant them anything right now, what would be the number one thing that they would ask for based on what it is that I know, what it is that I've seen, the conversations that are taking place on Facebook, based on the comments that I've seen on books related to this topic on Amazon, comments on, blog posts, comments in Facebook groups, comments on YouTube videos. What is it that if I could wave a magic wand right now, what is it that they would ask for? Right? If there was an ideal, perfect success story that the market would say, that's what I want, what would that look like? right? If I had to come up with, if there was one thing that I could promise them that they would say, this is a game changer. This changes everything for me. This is exactly what I've been wishing for, hoping for, waiting for. What would that be? Right. And this is that kind of activity is not a one-time thing. That is something that you should be doing on a regular basis. I talk about this with our top one clients. Many they'll be listening to this. I think there are a handful, maybe only a couple on here right now. But is regular thinking time, thinking specifically marketing. Right? Like knowing what I know, and even it goes beyond. Let me deviate for 1 second and say this, right? That even sitting back and thinking about knowing what it is that I know is out there that's being offered to the marketplace, knowing what it is that they're struggling with, knowing what it is that they want, knowing what it is that they don't want in terms of a solution, knowing what it is that they like about products, dislike about products. What could I offer? What isn't being offered? How isn't it being offered? If there was a change that I could make to a product or to a result or to an outcome, what would that be? Right? What is what is a problem or an issue that's wreaking havoc for clients that nobody else is addressing that I could address? Now, I'm not saying that I ask all of these questions every time I sit down to think. I might take one and then just think about it for 30 minutes. And I might come up with ideas and write down ideas. And the majority of the ideas that I come up with and the thoughts might be just stream of consciousness. But the point is that, right, like is stepping into the market, seeing it from the market's view, your prospect's view, getting out of your own way, not simply saying like, man, what would be exciting to promote? Not simply saying like, what could I talk really highly about? No, it's got to come from the market. It's got to come from the market. And so hope that makes sense. Before we go on to the next section, let me see. So there are some questions that came over. Okay. So let me see here. How detailed do we go down? Root cause symptom is no clicks, which is attention, which is really big idea issue, which is really lack of mechanism. I would say, so the question is, David asks, how deep do we go? Like how far down the root cause do we go? What I would say is you go down as far enough as, and he's talking about the unaddressed root problem, is you go down as far enough as necessary to hit a problem that is unaddressed that you can solve. And so, right, like ideally, I'm going to go down, like, let's say, right, it's really a big idea issue. Is anybody dealing with the big idea issue? Yeah. Well, okay. What's the cause? No big idea, because let's say there's no mechanism. Anybody dealing with that? Is that no? Boom. That's the one that I'm going to go for. So you go down as low enough, you go down deep enough until you find an unaddressed root problem that you can solve. Once you found an unaddressed root problem that you can solve, there you go. You don't need to go any deeper. You only need to go deep enough, right? In some cases, you might not be able to. In other words, in some cases, you'll go all the way down and there's somebody that's addressing, right? There's somebody out there that's addressing all of those already. The point is that you only have to go down deep enough to identify an unaddressed root problem, even if there are below that, right? But if nobody is here, you don't need to go any deeper. And so hope that answers the question. Yeah, so what we're saying is have a way that is better and different to solve your symptom pain. Here's how. Correct. That's ultimately what we're saying. We're not necessarily saying it in those words, David, but that is absolutely correct. We're like the simple, like don't, all you guys and gals, don't overthink it. Like every campaign, and I'm going to show you this. We're going to get into, like, of course, we're going to get into copy and words, and you're going to see how here's a different way to get the result that you want. Here's a different way to solve your problem. Here's what makes this way better than the others, right? And here's how it works, and here's why it works, and boom, 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 and get excited. And this is something different from you've done before, and here's your chance to get it right now. Like it's not the mistake that, and I want to share this. The mistake is is in thinking the novice mistake when it comes to copy is thinking that it's whiz bang words and phrases that mesmerize your prospect into buying, right? We're not using our words to trick the prospect. We're not using the words to try to hypnotically get the prospect to say, I want to buy, I want to buy. That's not what we're doing, right? That's nonsense. Like, we're not using trickery. There needs to be there needs to be strategy underneath what we're saying, right? And that strategy is ultimately that strategy is the high level view is what I'm giving you a chunk of today, right? That I've got something different and better to solve your problem and give you the result that you want. And here is why it's better. And here is why it's superior. And here's how you can get it. How we do that in the words and phrases and tonality and voice and language patterns and all that, so that it bypasses their buying filter, their radar, so that it doesn't come off obnoxious and pushy and aggressive and whatnot, so that it moves people to be like, dang, this sounds amazing, right? I need to get this right now. That's what we're going to cover tomorrow. But the strategy is like, look, I got something different. This thing that's different to solve your problem, give you the result that you want. It's not only different, but it's better than everything else out there. Let me show you why. Let me show you how it works. Here is the proof. Here is the evidence. Here's what it'll do for you. Instead of suffering with this, you could have this, and here's how you can get it. That's it. Like, don't overthink it. And so the real problem is so mechanism solves real problems and improving pain. So David asked this follow-up question, and I'm going to cruise through these questions and then get back to, because like I said, for those of you that jumped on late, we do have Monday night from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. I'm doing an extra just open Q&A, just flat out open Q&A, no training, just probably 3+ hours of just your questions, copy, blah, blah, blah. But so remember when I said earlier that there's no one size fits all. So meaning that there's no one single formula, that it depends. So let's say we don't identify an unaddressed root problem. We're just going after a problem that others are going after. So, right, the root cause, if you will, is addressed, right? And we're addressing the same root cause that is addressed. Right. Well, what we're going to show is that we've got a unique mechanism, a different way to address that problem. And our different way is better, right? Our different way of addressing that problem is better. And here's why, right? And here's why. When you have an unaddressed root problem, you still have a mechanism, but you say our mechanism is more effective at alleviating these symptoms because it addresses the real underlying root cause. So the only difference here, David, is that when you have an unaddressed root problem, the reason why the unique mechanism is so effective and so valuable is because it alleviates the unaddressed root problem, and it is the only solution that addresses the unaddressed root problem. But when you don't have an unaddressed root problem and you are just addressing a problem that others are, then we're going to demonstrate that our unique mechanism works better, some level of superiority. And I'm going to break this down for you, in fact, in just a second, some level of superiority over the other options. And so hope that makes sense. Todd, within the marketing world, a lot of people think they have a lead gen problem, but in reality, it is an offer problem. Would that be a URP? So what I would say is that you are likely right. There are, Jan, a lot of people that think they've got a lead gen problem. Most of the time, it's not a lead gen problem. Most of the time it is an offer problem. But what I would say is that an offer problem, or structuring the offer, is not an unaddressed root problem. It is being addressed. And so there are many folks that talk about the offer. Now, what I would say to you, without going too deep, and this is something that we could unpack on Monday night, is there could be a part of the offer that people get wrong or do wrong or leave out, and it's that part that, right, that is the cause of why their offer doesn't work. So while, right, and that's the kind of the trend that most markets follow, that right, it goes from general to more and more specific, right? Like, in other words, at one point in time, way back, I say this all the time, at one point way back, there was a town doctor. You went to that town doctor whether you had a lump on your head, a gunshot, or cancer, right? And then it splintered over time, and right, and then and specialty. Same thing here. You know, at one point we saw with traffic generation, it was how to generate website traffic. And then it was how to generate paid traffic, and then how to generate Facebook traffic, or, you know, Google AdWords traffic, and then how to generate Facebook traffic, and then how to generate Facebook traffic with retargeting. And you get all this, you know, splintering going on. And so the offer, fixing the offer, I wouldn't call it, again, I wouldn't say it's unaddressed, because it is addressed. And so what you're looking for is there something underneath that that's unaddressed? Right? Is it the naming that is is there something else that is unaddressed underneath that? Remember that the key word in the unaddressed root problem is unaddressed. What if I teach a thinking method so they can achieve their goals, any goal, how to be specific? I have many different success stories with great achievements with this method, but the achievements are as individual as individuals can be. So, right. So just saying to somebody, I have a way for you to achieve your goals, or follow this method and you'll achieve your goals, right? That's garbage. That's garbage because it's not garbage. It has nothing to do with you, right? That's garbage because it's been said time and time again. There's zero differentiation there. There's zero separation there. There's very little belief and credibility there. And there's very little, if anything, that I can picture in my mind's eye. What I would tell you is that, and this is something that, you know, you can do a little work and then you can share this with me, present this on Monday, and I'll be more than happy to chat with you and unpack it even more, is, right, what is a tangible result like that we can promise? Is it, you know, pick any one of your most important goals and I'll show you how to experience it in the next 36 days, guaranteed? Like, but I want to, you know, like, I want to get specific, and that's right. Like, narrow, you know, you may be thinking, well, I don't want, like, it's not just about one most important goal. It's about teaching people a way of thinking. It's about teaching people how to achieve their life dreams over the course. But you first have to solve the marketing issue, right? The belief issue, the credibility issue. And so we've got to solve that before we can help anybody, right? Like, before we can help anybody, they've got to buy. Before they could buy, we've got to create engagement. Before we create engagement, we've got to get attention. And so we've got to make sure that we've got something that's going to stop them, right? Prevent mental opt-out, things that I'm going to talk about in a second. And so I would be thinking about, well, that's already been said, right? The idea of how to achieve all your goals. And so how can I communicate, like, they want to achieve their goals? How else can we talk about that? How else can we look at that? What else can we say? What is more specific? What is more concrete? How can we pick out a piece of that and even just take a piece of that whole process? And how can we guarantee, or not guarantee, but promise that result? And so is that Brian said, my fiance is a therapeutic yoga teacher and her technique helps reduce stress, less pain, and increase range of motion. Struggle how to make this measurable and less vague. Well, yeah. So you say to somebody, so number one is, right. And some of this is so individual to every market that there is no one right answer, right? Obviously every marketplace is different. And again, we can spend a little bit of time talking about this on Monday, but Brian, you're absolutely right. The idea of reduce stress is incredibly vague. What the heck does that mean? Right? Like, what the heck does that mean? Reduce stress. Same thing with less pain. What does that mean? Less pain where? How much less pain? When? Like, is less pain enough less pain? Like, is a little bit less pain? Is it a lot less pain? Is it pain free? Is it no more pain? Am I going to still need medication? Am I going to have to take medication? Is it like, it's so vague that it just rolls off. It is puffery. And so what I would say is, when it comes to stress, like, again, what are the symptoms that the prospect is having? What are they like? What are they dealing with in their life? Don't just talk in vague generalities. Like, in other words, like they're stressed. What does that mean? What does that lead to? What does that cause in their life? What's happening? What are they feeling? What are they thinking? What are they seeing? Are they losing sleep at night? Right? Are they have they lost their appetite? Do they always feel like they're on edge? Are they short with people? Right? What is it that they are experiencing and dealing with? Does it cause them to drive, to drink at night? Same thing with on the pain side. I'd be asking myself to say, well, what kind of pain am I talking about? Where am I talking about it? Is it stopping them from doing certain things? Are they struggling to get out of bed in the morning? Right? Is it all right? Is it yoga for is it back pain that they get out of bed in the morning? They got to get out super slow because everything is stiff and tight and pain. They can't even tie their shoes, right? So that we could say, right, something along the lines of, wake up in the morning, loose, limber, and be able to tie your shoes fully bent over without without experiencing any pain or tightness. That's measurable. That's concrete. That's moving in the right direction. And so you just got to unpack a little bit more. You got to go from vague to specific. Like stress, what does that mean in their life? What are they experiencing? What are they seeing? What are they feeling? How is it impacting them? What is the sign or symptom of this increased stress in their life? Right? How is it manifesting itself? What is it about the way that it's manifesting itself that they don't want, that they don't like, that they're irritated by, that they're uncomfortable with, that we could say that will stop, that will no longer be there. You won't have to do that anymore. You won't have that anymore, right? You'll never have to take in, any kind of medication at night or supplement to fall asleep. You'll fall asleep within 15 minutes after you hit your head hits the pillow, right? See how that's what we're moving towards, more specific, away from vague general descriptions. Within the agency world, a lot of people think that they have a lead gen. Oh, okay, I answered that already. Sorry about that. Then the first line of my ad, for example, talks about something that no one else is talking about, your SEO agency is about to reach a client plateau. Want to know why? Would that be in the direction of bringing up an unaddressed problem they haven't thought about, their symptoms? Not necessarily. So your SEO agency is about to reach a client plateau. Want to know why is a proclamation, is almost, you could make the case, is a prediction. It's not necessarily an unaddressed problem unless you introduce something that, look, unless you introduced a problem that they are about to have, or that they do have, that they're unaware of, that is quietly, nefariously leading them to a client plateau. And unless they solve that unaddressed, issue, they are going to hit a plateau and blah, 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 blah. But just simply saying your SEO agency is about to reach a client plateau, want to know why, isn't right. There is no yet unaddressed, right? You could say it's about to hit a plateau because you don't have a significant, or you don't have a steady way of getting new clients. That's not necessarily an unaddressed root problem. Okay. You're absolutely correct, Michael. This is all why, all this stuff that in here is why the examination stage is so freaking critical. It's why it is essential. It's why it is valuable. The more you know about your prospect, the more you understand about your market and your prospect, the easier the copy process becomes, right? The more you understand, right? The more you understand, the easier this process is. The less you understand, the more difficult it is. I would really say that that a better way of saying it is, the less you know about your market, the more likely you are to be off the mark. That's really the reality, because what happens is the less you know about the market, the more your own thinking colors your copy. And unless you are the market, right, you're likely to be wildly off the mark. And so let's do this, and let's keep cruising, and let's talk about the unique mechanism. So just a couple things here to talk about the unique mechanism. And again, this is all really foundational stuff. The unique mechanism, you guys know, hopefully, is the unique piece, part, component, process, aspect framework, system, method, whatever you want to call it, formula behind your product, which solves the problem and produces the result. It is how your product or service works. It's the reason why your product or service works. So whether you've got an agency, right, and you do it for them, right, you're still producing a result for them. Remember, you're still presenting a solution. You're still solving a problem. You're still giving them the feelings that they want to have by giving them the result that they want, by alleviating the problem. And so how, like, if you say we're able to get top search engine rankings, how? What's the process that you use? And why is your process superior to every other agency? Like, why you is really why not, why you, meaning, right? Like, why your method? Why should I believe that your method is great? What makes your method special? What makes your process unique? And so, oops, it looks like, thank you. This is why I can't be left alone, because there are no slides on the screen. How it works and the reason why your product works. And so this is the beauty of this, just to give you a little bit, is you can identify this in almost any product or service. I always say all the time, people ask when I'm on, when I speak conferences or these like podcast episode things, people will ask, like, who does the E5 method work for everybody? And I always say the same thing, that the only product or service that it won't work for is when you are selling a pure commodity product. If you were selling a glass of tap water, right, then it's extremely difficult to develop a unique mechanism, because it's a glass of tap water. It's a commodity that you can get the same glass of tap water up the road, to the right, left, north, south, whatever. But as long as you're not selling a pure commodity, you can identify a unique mechanism. The reality is that the unique mechanism is, for lack of a better phrase, right, sharing with you guys in full transparency, is a marketing invention. It's simply about looking at your product through a different lens. So while there are some products out there on the market that have what I would call, again, for lack of a better phrase, a legitimate unique mechanism, meaning they've got a proprietary piece of software, they've got something patented, they have an actual unique mechanism in there. The reality is that the overwhelming majority of unique mechanisms are marketing inventions. There are ways of positioning, repositioning, and presenting a particular product or service. And so as long as you're not marketing and selling a pure commodity, you absolutely can identify your own unique mechanism. The reality is this, that the single most valuable thing that you can do for yourself to, and this is important, right? Because tomorrow, when we get into the nitty-gritty details, you're going to see me talking about unique mechanisms and how we present the unique mechanism and how we frame the unique mechanism and whatnot. And that's why I want you to understand this. And this is essential. This, to me, is one of the most valuable things for you to understand as it relates to writing copy, is the mechanism. The reality is that the single most valuable activity that you can do as it relates to the unique mechanism is not naming it. Naming it is one of the easiest parts. It's also one of the most insignificant parts. I always say that there's only one rule I have only one rule I have for naming the unique mechanism. That is, don't name it something that sounds benefit driven. Don't name it something that sounds commercial. Don't name it the explosive muscle building system or the explosive muscle building formula, right? Which clearly has no credibility and sounds commercialized. Instead, what you want to name it, something that sounds scientific, something that sounds official, something that could appear in a news article, something that could appear in a college textbook. You want it to sound legitimate, not like a commercialized, benefit-driven product. Save your product names for those benefit-driven, commercialized sounding feels. But for the unique mechanism, make it sound official, right? Like, and the beauty is this, I want you to understand something. Every single thing out there that has a name, somebody named it. So one of the things that, like we get clients that are like, what do you mean? That sounds kind of scammy and cheesy, like scammy, like I'm naming, I'm naming the mechanism. Like, who am I to name it? Who was anybody to name anything? That's the reality. Who is anybody to name anything? Every single process, system, method, framework out there that's got a name, someone named it. Someone came up with a name for everything. And so the reality is that why not you? Right. And you'll understand the foundation of why you should feel comfortable doing this in just a second, but you name it. You just don't want it to sound commercial. You want it to sound more credible. That's that part that I just shared right there. The naming it is the least important part of the entire process with the unique mechanism. The single most important part with the unique mechanism is that you spend the time interrogating your method, meaning that you spend the time unpacking what it is that you do. Why does it work? How does it work? Why do you do what you do? Why those 6 steps? Why in that order? Why not 7 steps? Why not the 5 steps? What happens if you do it out of order? Why does this work when you do it this way? Why do you do it this way? Right? All of that. By spending that time unpacking your mechanism, that's what's going to give you the information you need for something that we're going to do in just a little bit. That is the single most valuable thing that you can do with the unique mechanism is understanding how does your thing work. It's amazing to me, gang, how many marketers and entrepreneurs, I don't care, agency folks, educators, trainers, experts, coaches, consultants, I don't care. It amazes me how many people just take for granted the way their thing works. It's almost like they do it intuitively, right? And they've never spent the time to think about why do they do it that way? And why do they do it in that order? And what would happen if they did it out of order? And what would happen if they added a step? What would happen if they took out a step? Why do you do this first? Why do you do this second? Why do you do this third? Why are all these pieces necessary? What role does this play? What if we took this out? What would change? What wouldn't happen? What would that lead to? All of those things, right? All of those things are part of the interrogation process to understand the mechanism. And that's essential because that's where you identify what it is that we're ultimately going to use to give support, the logical foundation, the logical justification, the logical support for what makes your mechanism superior. See, check this out, gang. I want you to listen to me for 1 second here. So, and then somebody remind me that I got to share my screen again once I'm ready to share the screen. So check this out. Right. So, we talked about like, look, you're ultimately showing your prospects, your marketplace that you've got something different and superior, that your solution, listen to me, that your solution is the best, right? That's ultimately what we're saying, that your solution is superior. Well, for every single one of you, I have to believe that you believe that your solution is the best. I have to believe that you're doing it the way that you're doing it, whether it's agency, whether the system that you're teaching or equipping people with or showing people. I have to believe that you believe it is the best. I have to believe that if you didn't think it was the best, you would do it a different way, right? You're not intentionally doing or using a subpar method. I believe that you are doing it because you believe it's the best. Therefore, right? Therefore, we just need to understand, why do you believe that it is the best? The why you believe that it is the best comes from the interrogation. It comes from the questioning of, why do you do what you do? Why do you do it this way? Why not do it a different way? What would happen if you changed the order of it? What would happen if you took a piece out? What would happen if you put something random in? What would happen if you skipped this step? What would happen if you did this step a different way? What would happen if you automated it instead of doing it the manual way that you do it? Why do you do it the manual way? What's the benefit of that? What's the change of that? See, because of all of that, all of the questioning of that gives you the reasons why. The reason why we do this is because X, Y, Z. It leads to LMNOP. And that's important because that allows us to do X, Y, Z and blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff gives you the fodder. If somebody were to say to you, why is yours the best? Why is yours the best? Why is your superior? Why is your method superior to every other method? Not why are you superior? Not what makes you better? Not what makes you smarter? Not what makes you cooler? What makes your method, your approach, the thing that you're going to teach me, what makes it superior compared to every other method? So you're going to tell me about growing a green, lush lawn. Why is your method superior to the other 6 methods for growing a green, lush lawn? Tell me what makes your method superior, right? You can't answer that question unless you have spent the time interrogating your unique mechanism or your process, your framework. And when you have spent the time, or you do spend the time, man, that becomes so much of the body of your campaign, the argument of your campaign. That's where all of that information, when people hear me say the campaign argument, the stuff that you're going to see me unpack for you, like I'm going to show you, I'm going to start to show you, I'm going to show you an example in a little bit. I'm going to show you copy today before we wrap, before we get into the big day tomorrow, copy day, right? Like so much of the campaign argument that people are intimidated by comes from the answers to the questions that I just shared with you. Comes to the answers to the questions that I just shared with you. And you've got to recognize that that is critical. And so let's go back here. Understand, right, that the unique mechanism is what gives the prospect hope, and it gives them justification for the hope. Because they see this as the unique mechanism as maybe this is what I've been missing. Maybe this is what I've been lacking. Maybe this is why I failed before. Maybe this is why nothing else worked. Maybe this is the one answer. Maybe this is the ticket right here. And so it stimulates a feeling of hope. You see, you've got to recognize that we're in essence, and we're going to talk about this in a bit, right? We're giving them something new, right? New. And this new thing, right? This different thing, right, is better than everything else. So we're not just giving them something better. We're giving them something different, which is better. Right. So we're not just improving on or fixing some small little piece. We're giving them something different, which is superior. And so because it's different than anything that they've tried before, it stimulates this hope. It might seem like a nuance, but it's so much more powerful than just you're doing things this way. I'm going to show you one improvement on how to do that one thing that's going to change everything for you. That's nowhere near as powerful as you're doing it this way and not getting results. I'm going to show you a different way to do it that's even easier, that produces even faster results and better results for you. It's the different, this is different and better, not just better, that gives folks this feeling of hope. And that is enormously powerful. And so get that. Next, we're going to go into the offer solution. Before we do that, we are going to take our final bio break of the day. We're going to take our final our final bathroom break of the day. Let me see here. 10 minutes. And where is this thing? I do have a countdown somewhere. And so this is what happens when you do your own hang on one second. Let me see here. There we go. All right. 10-minute bio break. So it is 3:32. We're going to be back at 3:42. And then we're going to rock and roll. Still so much content to cover. And so 10 minutes. I love it. Okay. And so just to make sure you guys can see me, hear me, actually, let me do this because we're going to go into, and we're going to cruise, but I want to make sure that you guys can see my screen. And so somebody just let me know, you see my beard and hear your manly voice. Awesome. On the manly voice thing. Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you guys. Cool. So I want to talk about, let's keep going. Let's keep cruising. Odds are we're going to go a little bit over. So a little bit over 5 o'clock, and odds are I'm still going to have stuff that we're going to carry over to tomorrow. And so, but we're going to cover it all. And so here, I want to talk to you about, want to move to the next thing. And I mentioned this earlier, and this is valuable for you to understand. And so I'm going to try to actually pick up the pace with a lot of this stuff. You guys can hang with me. And like I said, on Monday, we'll do the Q&A, and I'll stay as long as necessary to make sure that everybody's questions get answered. And so 3 hours is nothing for me, for us. And so I want to talk about the offer solution, and I want to frame this, and I want you guys to listen to me. And so I know that it's been a long day so far. We are still just scratching the surface. I still have some really, really important stuff to cover with you in the remaining time today. And so please, please, please just hang in there. I promise it'll be well worth it for you guys. If you give me the next 90 minutes of your time. And so I want to talk about the offer. And I want to talk about just one piece of the offer. And this is something that's really been on my mind a lot more lately, something that I've communicated with my team a lot more. And I mentioned this earlier, that there is a neglected component when it comes to putting together offers, that in the spirit of transparency, I only really learned, it only really became top of mind for me. Really, I would probably say it became really top of mind for me in like the last 18 months or so. And so I want you to think of the offer, and I want you to think of there being two main kind of elements, two main buckets or categories when we think of the offer. And the reason why what I started to say was that, like, this is money. The offer is so important. Like we talked about at the very beginning of the morning workshop, the offer is a make or break element. And this one part that we're going to talk about is really a make or break element in terms of the offer. And it's something that most marketers don't know and or neglect. So two buckets. The first bucket that people think of, that most people go to, that I used to go to when it comes to offer creation, is the idea of an irresistible proposition. And the irresistible proposition is this idea that it's really made up of those elements that we talked about earlier. What are the deliverables? What's the features, the advantages, the benefits of those things, the functional, dimensionalized, emotional, what's the price, what's the terms, what's the risk reversal, what's the premiums, what's the reason to respond now. And when most people think about, and listen to me, when most people think about putting together an irresistible offer, what they're really thinking about is the irresistible proposition portion of the offer. They're thinking about what deliverables can we add? What are the right deliverables? What deliverables would be extremely valuable? What are the benefits that we can articulate with all these deliverables? What's the right price point? What's the right terms? Should I go with a soft offer? Should I go with a hard offer? What's the right risk reversal? Should we go conditional, unconditional? Should we use a combination? Should we give double your money back? Right? What are the premiums that we're going to add in? What do the premiums address? What additional benefits do they give? Right? And what they think of when they think of putting together an irresistible offer is they're really thinking about this component, the irresistible proposition. And while this is important, what I said earlier to you guys and gals is even more important. And that is the other component being what I refer to as an attractive solution. An attractive solution is ultimately how compelling, how interesting, how attractive is the solution that you are proposing the prospect pay for, right? So is it an attractive solution and you're making an irresistible proposition for an attractive solution, or is it an ugly solution and yet you're still making an irresistible proposition for that ugly solution? Because it's these two things combined that ultimately determine how compelling your offer is, how good your offer is. And you need both. And this is the thing that, right, like I really didn't fully grasp, or I wasn't able to wrap my head around. I was almost, in the spirit of transparency, I almost used to think that it was, to give an extreme example, that it was a matter of the product. The solution is the solution is the solution is the solution. It is what it is. We're not going to look to improve it, to make it more attractive, whatever, whether we're selling something gorgeous or selling something hideous, it is what it is. Right. And we're just going to make the most irresistible proposition that we can for this hideous thing. Right. Let's say. Right. And I almost didn't put any thought into, from a marketing perspective, how attractive the solution was. I just put all the thought into making an irresistible proposition. And the reality is that a really hideous solution, that I don't care how irresistible the proposition is, people aren't going to want it. And so what I'm saying is, right, if something is or feels extremely difficult to use, it takes a long time to see the rewards of, there's a steep learning curve, it requires a massive investment, it's tedious, all of that, right? If you've got an unattractive solution, an irresistible proposition might increase the amount of people that say yes, but it's not going to push you to that double-digit sales conversion rate that folks are after. And so you need a combination of both. And so I just want to quickly cover the elements of an attractive solution. So I'm not going to talk about the irresistible proposition. I've talked about that many, many times before. But I want to talk about what makes for an attractive solution. So, right, if you are, let's go back to that weird example of I want a lush green lawn, right? And so I've got a system that I'm going to teach you, that I'm going to equip you with to get that lush green lawn. You follow this system and it's going to give you a lush green lawn, gorgeous, full, blah, blah, blah lawn. It's going to look like carpet or whatever, in 5 weeks or whatever. And I'm going to teach it to you. I'm going to teach it to you with, videos and cheat sheets and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to give you all this stuff and here's what it's going to do for you. And here's the price and here's the terms and here's the guarantee and blah, 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 blah. Well, as I said earlier, if that method for growing a green, lush lawn is extremely tedious, if it requires 4 hours a day of my time, it requires manual labor, me out there working with tools that I then have to invest in out in the sun. It's a very precise process or very precise solution. So if I make one mistake, I blow the whole thing. It works very slowly. So I'm not going to see the first sprout of grass for weeks. What was I going to say? And because it's so tedious and so in depth and requires consistency, there is a low likelihood of success. I don't care how irresistible the proposition is. You're not going to get the masses to take advantage of that because the solution itself isn't attractive. Remember, when we talked about the offer, we said that what does the prospect need to give and what do they get? What do they need to give in time, energy, effort, manpower, resources, investment, as well as the money exchange to get the actual solution, to get the product? And so I want you to understand that our aim, when possible, and I want you to think about this in the context of creating new product, new offers going forward, is that the beauty in something like an agency, consulting, coaching, courses, training products, information products, live events, master, all that kind of stuff. I want you to think that you've got the ability to create new solutions, to re-engineer solutions to make them more attractive. And what we ultimately want to do is we want to start with engineering, creating an attractive solution, and then wrap it in an irresistible proposition. So think about like how attractive is the solution that we are offering in the deliverables as part of the proposition. We want to start with making our solution as attractive as possible, and then We want to wrap it in an irresistible proposition. So I already said, and this is right, wrong, or indifferent, right? This is just the reality of what exists in a powerful solution or in an attractive solution. Number one, it solves a significant problem. That goes without saying, right? So it's only valuable based on the problem that it solves. It produces a big desirable result. And so remember I said earlier that we're not talking about insignificant results. The bigger the result, the outcome, the transformation that a solution produces, the more attractive it is. The smaller the result, the outcome, the less attractive it is, right? So you'll get 11 extra visitors a week to your website using my traffic system, right? Is not attractive. Even despite the rest of these elements here, if that is a tiny result, a tiny outcome, it doesn't make for a very attractive solution. And therefore that unattractive solution wrapped in an irresistible proposition isn't going to convert nearly as well. And so I want something that produces a big desirable result. Next is it's new. It's not simply better. And this I already alluded to earlier. This is replacement, not improvement. That's something that Dan Kennedy wisely said many, many years ago. My buddy Russell Brunson, co-founder of ClickFunnels, talked about in one of his books, I think. And that is that we're giving them something new. We're not giving them an improvement to what it is that they're already doing. We're giving them something new. We're replacing the old. We're getting rid of the old and replacing it with something new. We're not taking the old and making it better. We're replacing the old with something new. And so if you think about, look at the E5 method as an example. The E5 method, for example, the E5 method isn't a way of doing better marketing. It is a system that replaces your old method of marketing. It's a system that replaces the old approach or the other approaches to crafting a customer acquisition campaign. And it replaces it with an altogether new system. And so the solution, it becomes more attractive when it is new, not simply better. When it's new, right? When it's different, new, and obviously superior, which we're going to talk about, or I'm going to mention, you're going to see here, which I've said umpteen times already. And so replacement, not improvement. It sounds strange when you think about when I first started pondering this many, many moons ago, when I first heard Dan say this, I was like, is that really true? Like, don't people really just want a slight tweak, a slight change to the old to make it better? Like, it doesn't replacement seem, more like more work involved? But the reality is that replacement gives people hope, because prospects doubt, especially when they've tried something for a long period of time. When you're dealing with prospects that have tried the old way or the previous way with lack of results, right? They doubt the likelihood of a small tweak. They doubt the reality of a small tweak being the thing that changes everything. And so they doubt that, right? Like, how could it be one tweak to what it is that I've already done that's going to produce these big, gigantic results when I haven't had any results prior? And so the belief in the viability of the thing increases when it is replacement, not improvement. Next is, of course, I said, it's viewed as unique and different. So we're not selling more of the same. We're not selling an improvement on something that's already out there, or a tweak or an enhanced version of what's already out there. We're selling something different, right? Something unique. Next is it's seen as superior to other options. We talked about this already. Next is right, wrong, or indifferent. It's quick and easy to implement. The reality is that not everything is quick and easy to implement. Not everything can be presented as quick and easy to implement. For example, I never use that phraseology when talking about the E5 method, that it's quick and easy to implement, because it's not quick and easy to implement. But fortunately, it produces better results than anything else. And so the reality is you're not always able to have a solution that is quick and easy to implement. But the quicker and easier something is to implement, the more attractive it becomes. You should know that with people in general. They want quick, they want easy, they want simple, and they want fast results. right? They want fast results. And I would say that the reality is that those two bullets right there are probably the single two biggest elements of what make a solution attractive. The easier and quicker something is to implement and the faster the results that it produces, the more attractive the solution is. The more attractive the solution is. This is why when it comes to quick and easy to implement, this is why in the training, coaching, consulting world, the more that something can be positioned as done for you or done with you, the more of the work that can be done for them, the closer that you can get to done for you, the more attractive the solution becomes. Right? That's the reality, right, wrong, or indifferent. And the reason why is because faith and belief in the result, in the confidence in the outcome increases, right? It increases because the more things that they have to do themselves, the more likely they are to screw it up. The more steps there are to something that I have to do on my own, the greater the likelihood of me screwing something up. The less that I have to do, and the more that's done for me by the pros, by the experts, by the creators, whatever, then the more confidence I have in being able to get the result. And the more confidence I have in being able to get the result, the more attractive the solution looks to me, right? And so when you've got something that, right, it solves a big problem, and right, it solves a severe, a significant problem in my life that I want resolved, and it produces a big result, a big desirable outcome, transformation, and it does it in a way that is new, is a replacement to the old, right? And something that I see as it's unique, it's different from anything that I've tried before. And I believe that it is superior in producing results, and it produces quick and easy results, and it produces fast results. And there's a portion which at least can be positioned as done for you, or is done for me, so to speak, right? And I have a high level of success. You have an extremely attractive solution. And then when you take that extremely attractive solution and then you wrap it in an irresistible proposition by, again, like making the terms a no-brainer, guarantee, risk reversal, the premiums to fill in any gaps, you've got something that people leap at. And so this is the kind of stuff I'm sharing this with you here because I just want you to understand the thinking, the mindset, right? And so the beauty in the agency world, the beauty in the coaching, consulting, information product, course creation world is that we get to sit back and we get to engineer and re-engineer solutions all the time. And the reality is, from a marketing perspective, is you want a solution that is as attractive as possible. I'll also tell you that the more attractive the solution is, the higher the price point can be. The less attractive, the lower the price point has to be, period. End of the story, right? And so the more attractive the solution, the more valuable the solution. The more attractive solution, the easier the conversion process is. A more attractive solution will even make up for weaknesses in the proposition, right? And when you combine an attractive solution with an irresistible proposition, you've got the best of both worlds. Now, I'll tell you, just to put a final kind of bow on this, right? I told you guys earlier that at the beginning of our day that, right, the single best thing, the single most valuable use of your time really is in offer creation. I'll tell you that this is where I would put the lion's share of my effort when it comes to new offers. Is I would engineer, I would identify through ongoing examination, I would identify significant problems that the market has that I believe that we can solve. Then what I would do is I would create and engineer an attractive solution. I would hit as many of these as I possibly could. And then I would take that and then I would wrap it in an irresistible proposition. I would form or create or engineer the most irresistible no-brainer proposition that I possibly can that would make it harder for the prospect to say no than to say yes. Like I would make it that good, that much of a no-brainer. And then starting with that bad boy, then I would go and I would engineer the copy, because the job now of the copy is so much easier thanks to how good the offer is. And so that is the offer solution. Now, I want to talk about decisions and making decisions. And I want to give you kind of the streamlined approach and then the more in-depth approach. These are decisions that need to be made before you can write any copy. And so number one, what I call the bare bones big three, based on the examination. So based on prospects, competitors, and the product, based on our examination, based on what it is that we now know, based on what it is that I shared with you, at a bare minimum, bare bones, there are three things that I need to know at the very beginning before I start writing any copy. Number one, what is the targeted problem that I'm going to address? What is that problem? What is the pain associated with it? And so that's number one, bare minimum. You need to know that. Number two is, what is the primary promise? What's that big overarching outcome of result transformation that I'm going to present with specific, concrete, tangible, measurable language? And then three is process or the unique mechanism. So I did this these three P's just for you to remember it, but think of the problem, the promise, and the process being the mechanism. And so what is the mechanism by which I am going to fulfill that promise and alleviate that problem? These are the bare bones big three that you need to know, that you need to be clear on at the very beginning, right? What's the problem, the pain associated with it? What's the promise, the outcome, right? The result, the transformation, and what's the process that we're going to give them or use with them to deliver that promise and alleviate that problem. Those are the big three. You want to dive deeper into this. Here are the questions that we answer at the beginning. And you've heard me say this in some form or fashion, a number of different ways today already. What's the problem that you're going to solve? Number two, what are the core benefits that you're going to focus on? So what are the core, the core results, the core outcomes, the core changes, the core improvements to the prospect's life based on what it is that we know about the prospect, right? What are we going to focus on? What are the core emotions that we're going to prod, which we're going to talk about, right? What are the emotions, the buying emotions that we're going to push, that we're going to prod throughout? Are we going to use, fear of missing out? Are we going to use, exclusivity or a sense of belonging? Are we going to prod, what are the emotions that we're going to prod, which we're going to talk about? Are we going to talk about greed, all that? What's the idea hook that we're going to use? And so what's the theme, the idea behind the campaign? What's the unique mechanism? What are the objections, concerns, beliefs, which I need to address, right? So what are the beliefs, the concerns, and the objections that I need to address? Now, this is a strategic thing here. Like, this is how you identify this is less of a copy thing and more of a strategic thing. But what I want you to understand is this, that the aim of our copy is really to override the misbeliefs, the objections, the concerns, and to replace them with what it is that we need the prospect to believe, right? In other words, we're going to correct the misbeliefs. We're going to correct or eliminate the objections and replace them with the beliefs that we need the prospect to have to want to buy. And you'll see me unpack this for you tomorrow and give you examples of how I use copy to overcome certain misbeliefs or certain objections or certain concerns to lead the prospect to see that our solution is the smartest one for them. What's the vision that I'm going to create for the after state? So when I said, like, what does life look like for your prospect after they solve the problem, after they're using your what does life look like after the problem is solved with your solution, with your mechanism, with your framework, with your approach, with your methodology, with your formula, whatever it is, right? What is that after state? Remember, we are the director of the movie in the mind of the prospect. We're creating mental images, pictures. What are those mental images of what life can look like after the problem is solved thanks to our solution? And so what is that vision? What does that look like? That also comes from that examination. What does the prospect want? The prospect is here. They want to go here. What does here look like? What are they hearing? What are they seeing? What are they tasting? What are they touching, right? All that. What does their life look like after? Because that's the vision that we are going to create for them. And we're going to tie that vision to solving the problem with our solution. And so what is that vision? What's the prospect's core emotion about the problem? I already talked to you guys about what is that general emotional state of the prospect coming into the campaign. So based on the type of problem, which bucket is it an unresolved, is it unresolved distress? Is it an unfulfilled desire? What is the core emotion that the prospect has coming in? Are they excited? Are they stoked? Or are they dejected? Is it negative? And this is an important thing. Like, I want you to understand. So, so check this out. So I want you to understand this one question for 1 second before we go on. So, I've seen this mistake where, there are a lot of different types of campaigns, a lot of different lead types, like they're certainly like, there's fear-based, a fear-based campaign, for example. And what I've seen is I've seen marketers, I've seen entrepreneurs that they'll see a campaign out there in the world, out in the wild, that worked really well for a particular product or service. And let's say it's fear-based, right? Like the end of America, right? And they think, wow, like, man, that is, that thing worked like gangbusters. Let me take that fear-based promotion, that fear-based approach, and let me use it in my world. And they take that fear-based approach and they bring it into their world. And let's say, as an example, they end up with some fear-based promotion about learning to play piano. Like, what? Huh? You know what I mean? Like, where did that even come from? Right? Like, see, that is a disconnect with how the prospect feels. Why would you use a fear-based promotion when somebody's interested in learning piano, when something is an unfulfilled desire and they're coming in a positive, excited mental state, and they're looking forward to this new hobby and they're looking forward to learning this new skill and showing off. And all of a sudden you're like, like you're, the whole your future happiness is about to fall apart if you don't learn how to play piano. Like, what in the world are you doing? And I see that more than you could believe. I see that, right? That is a misunderstanding of the core emotion that your market has coming in, right? You don't try to use a fear-based promotion unless you're talking to people that already have fear about the topic at hand. Right? Like, you don't use a fear-based, you don't start off negative when you're talking to people that are coming in positive. You don't start off positive when people are coming in fear-based. You know what I mean? Like, you don't start off all happy-go-lucky if you're talking to people that are terrified that their new diabetes diagnosis is going to ruin their life. Right? Like, you don't start off, you got to understand the core emotion that people have coming in. And so what is their general emotional state coming in? Next is, what is the buying belief that we need to establish in the mind of the prospect before going into the offer? And I'm going to break this down for you in another 2 slides because this is critically important. I always start out, and I want you to start out before you write any copy, knowing where you are going to lead your prospects. What is the one belief that you are going to establish in their mind? The aim of your marketing, the aim of your body copy, the aim of your argument, right? Right? What is the one belief that you need prospects to have before you go into your offer so they jump at your offer, so they see it as the smart decision, right? See, understand, and this is something that, we'll talk about in just a little bit. I told you this already. Everything that I do and say and show and present and demonstrate is done and there for a reason. There is a strategic purpose behind everything that I do. When I start off understanding these things. What is the problem that we're going to solve, right? What are the benefits that we're going to focus on? What are the core emotions that I'm going to prod? And everything that I do fills in one or more of these, right? So everything that I say is either in there to demonstrate how we're going to solve the problem, to demonstrate how it alleviates the fear, to demonstrate the outcome that they can expect, the positive outcome, the benefit, to prod an emotion, to show what makes this different, to show what makes this superior, right? Like, everything that is done for a purpose. And you're going to understand in just a couple slides how all of that can be summed up in one belief. So that ultimately everything that we do and say and show in the copy is there to lead your prospects to that one belief. And so, right, I call it the buying belief, and we engineer that, like we formulate what's called a campaign thesis, which we'll do in a second. This is, just a simple list of, and this is right, like there are more emotions than this, but at the end of the day, right, this is like, what are the emotions that you're ultimately going to prod throughout your campaign? Now, I want to just talk a little bit about this for 1 second, that like, this is another thing. It goes back to, you've got to understand, people overthink, and I want you to listen to me here. People overthink this emotion, the emotional stuff as it relates to the kind of the buying emotions, if you will. They overthink it and they get way too in the like they get lost in here. What I want you to think about is, as it relates to your product, your solution, and the transformation, the alleviation of the problem, the alleviation of the pain, and the result, the after state that it produces, what are the emotions that are tied to that? Right. And so what are the emotions that are tied to that? Like, if you're teaching people piano, let's say, is anger anywhere in that realm? Is there any aspect of learning to play piano that that is tied to anger in any way? Can we leverage anger to help sell more piano lessons? Right? I would have to say no, likely not, unless we're talking to individuals that, got swindled by, some prior, piano teacher or something like that. The answer is no. If we're talking to, let's say, the Grandpa Kurtz, the 55 plus white men conservative, right? And this is, the Democrats are trying to keep you from profiting from the most valuable investments on Wall Street. Here's how to strike back. Right now, you've got you've got anger, right, which is they're trying to keep you from benefiting. Same thing with, if there was like the alternative health space, anger towards the pharmaceutical industry. And so can we leverage that in there? Like, can we leverage that anger? Well, some anger may exist if they believe that, and we can demonstrate that they're trying to keep you from the most effective natural remedies because it doesn't help them to make money. And so, right. So see how it's more of a natural fit. Is there, let's say, in piano lessons, is there any what was I going to say? Is there any tie to guilt and shame? Likely not. And like, look, my point is that there are some emotions that are just natural fits. Right? Like, there are some emotions that are natural fits. There might be, let's say, in business development, like in business, growth, right? I know that I can prod greed. I know I can prod belonging and exclusivity. I know I can prod pride. I know I can prod envy. Those are all emotions that I can prod in there. I probably could tap into anger if I wanted to, or fear if I wanted to. I personally don't like tapping into fear and anger. It's just not my style. It's not what I want to, put out into the world, but I certainly could. But I know that, right, greed fits, belonging, exclusivity fits, pride fits, and envy fits, right? And so I'm going to leverage those. But if those aren't natural fits, don't try to make them fit. Right. That's the same mistake of the piano, program, trying to, like, how can I do a fear-based promotion? Right. Like, why would you do a fear-based promotion for something that has nothing to do with fear? Why would you do an anger-based promotion that has nothing to do with anger, where there's no anger that exists? Why would you try to do why would you try to leverage guilt and shame when you're selling piano lessons? Or like, like you're selling a fishing lure. Are you're going to sell it based on guilt and shame? You know what I mean? Like, you might, leverage a little bit of, of like, don't be embarrassed in front of your friends as they're landing the big bass and you're coming home with nothing. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. But, the point is that look for the natural fits. Don't try to force it. That's what a lot of ridiculous copy. When I say ridiculous, I just mean unbelievable copy that doesn't have an impact because it is, it's a stretch. It's overzealous, is copy that tends to or tries to leverage emotions that are just not the right fit. And they make leaps from what their product does to benefits, to certain benefits. Like a couple weeks ago on our team marketing call, and I'm not sure if Chris is on here. So Chris Cole is a member of our team. And so Chris was on this call. We looked at a promotion for a graphic design piece of software, like a graphic design piece of software. It was a new software, graphic design. And it was so outlandish because this guy was saying, right, with this graphic design software, you will get endless sales or something like that. I don't remember the exact verbiage. But it was like, right, this, there was a new way of creating graphics with this all-in-one graphic design app or something like that. And this guy was tying to this all-in-one graphics app, this idea of finally, like grow your business rapidly, get endless traffic and endless buyers, like finally generate the sales that you deserve. How the heck did you make a leap from a graphic design software all the way to sales? That is an example, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, of overreaching. That is, there was a question asked earlier about like how deep do you go, like how, at one point on one of our calls, Teddy Garcia, our chief technology officer, he even asked, like, well, when do you stop peeling back the onion? Like, when do you, because you could say you graphic design, you create better ads. And what does that do for you? That gets more attention. What does that do for you? It gets more clicks. And what does that do for you? It drives more traffic to your website. And what does that do for you? Well, it could get you more leads, or it could get you more sales. It could get, like, where do you draw the line? You draw the line when we're going to talk about this tomorrow. You draw the line when there is other stuff that plays a role. Like, more attractive ads, like, look, you can't say that more attractive ads are going to get you more leads, right? Because maybe you've got a crap opt-in page. You can't say that simply having more nicer graphics in your ads are gonna give you endless sales. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous reach. It's a ridiculous stretch, right? You're leaping from one thing all the way to something else, right? Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. And I see that time and time again with emotions being prodded, right? And thinking that, like, the more of these emotions that I can use, the better. That's true when they are appropriate. When they are appropriate. And I'll tell you, just to make a note of this thing, that fear is the most powerful emotion on this list. So fear is the most powerful emotion on this list. However, what I will tell you is this, that fear-based promotions tend to be either boom or bust, right? They either work really well or they do not work at all. Fear-based promotions can be extremely tough, not my style, right? And, I'm willing to sacrifice the result that we can get from fear-based promotions because I just don't want to add that. Like, I just don't want to do that. But the reality is that they tend to be boom or bust. Very similar to, by the way, just for what it's worth, and we're going to talk a little bit tomorrow about storytelling and the right way to do it and how to avoid a bold story and blah, 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 and all this, like some cool tricks. But the reality is that, and this is something for you guys to just grasp and write down. There a lot of people talk about, rightly so, they talk about the power of story in marketing. And they talk about the power of a story-based lead or story-based promotions, and how they can be wildly effective. And they can be wildly effective. Absolutely. When done right, they can be wildly effective. The reality is that similar to fear-based promotions, story-based promotions also tend to be either boom or bust, meaning that when they're done right and it's dialed, they can do extremely well. But when it's off the mark, even just a little bit, it's a dud. And so this is why I tend to not use story-based promotions. Is that because they're not effective? Oh, they're wildly effective. It's the odds, right? The reality is that the odds of it being spot on, like it's the hardest type of campaign to create, and create well, I should say, right? It's the hardest effective campaign or hardest effective copy to create. With a story-based promotion, your prospect has to be able, first of all, it has to be believable. It has to be interesting. It has to be compelling. It has to lead to the establishment of certain beliefs, thoughts, recognition. The prospect has to be able to see themselves in the story, right? It takes a lot of skill to tell a good story the right way in marketing. That's why you're going to see when I show you in just a second, I have a go-to lead structure, the way that I open up almost all of our campaigns, not all, but the majority, especially front-end campaigns, and it is not story-based and it is not fear-based. And so I'm going to show you in just a bit. So here, I'm going to go through this quickly, just because we're going to talk a little bit about this more tomorrow tactically. But you've got to recognize that. Remember when I said, like, with in copy, and this is right, like this is a lot of stuff today. Told you this is a lot of stuff, and I'm still I really just passed about the 55% mark of the slides for today. And so a lot. And you don't need to remember all of this. So I have no fear. But remember when I said that there are, when it comes to the offer, what does the prospect need to give and what do they get, right? Well, there are perceived risks that prospects have when buying. And it's not just financial loss. There are risks associated with the loss of face, reputation, identity, character. There's loss of time. There's inconvenience, work, effort, energy. There's the potential for hassle or intimidation. Are you now going to call me? Are you going to send stuff to me in the mail? Are you going to sell my information to somebody else? There's of course the risk of unsatisfactory results, meaning like, right, I won't get what was promised. And even though there might be a guarantee, the guarantee is typically financial. And so it doesn't cover the loss of time. It doesn't cover the loss of face. It doesn't cover the potential hassle or intimidation. It doesn't cover the inconvenience, the work, the energy, the effort. It just potentially replaces the financial aspect. And so there's the fear of a risk of unsatisfactory results. And then there is disappointment and frustration. Disappointment with the fact that the problem still exists, right? So I tried your thing. I spent money on it. There's potential financial loss there, depending on the guarantee. There is this, like, I'm embarrassed. I look like an idiot in front of my spouse. I wasted hours every week over the last handful of weeks. Man, this was a pain in the butt. I had to go out and buy certain tools and blah, blah, blah. I had to learn XYZ, right? Like, I haven't gotten any sales calls from you, but I'm afraid I may. I didn't get the results that I wanted. And now I'm pissed because I'm right back in the same situation I was a month ago. These are things that you got to be aware of, right? Because we are going to show or demonstrate, we're going to alleviate as much of these as we possibly can. We want to lessen these as much as we can, right? Like, and so we want to lessen the fear of loss of face. We want to show the opposite. We want to show the insignificant time. We want to show the ease of implementing. We want to show them that there is no reason to be intimidated by this process, by this opportunity. And so these are things that you've got to recognize, because it's not just the financial. Remember, it's not what stops people from buying isn't just the financial. Like, so understand that this is, you can lead somebody to see that you've got the best solution, the solution to solve their problem better than any other method, mechanism, system, framework out there. But if they're still like, what about my, I'm afraid I'm risking my time, I'm risking my convenience, with the work I've got to do, I'm risking, am I going to be overwhelmed, like intimidated by this thing, right? Am I going to get hassled afterwards? Am I really going to get the result? That's all confident. These are things we have to address in the copy. And so I think a question came in. I just want to take this real quick. Todd, can you talk how you did this for this weekend program as a case study? Specifically what, Brian? And so what specifically are you talking about? How I did what for this weekend or this workshop? Keep in mind, and you could type that in there. Keep in mind, and that might be a great thing to share on Monday, but go ahead, pop it into the little question thing. Keep in mind, this was really what I would call really mainly a back-end promotion for us. So we didn't run any traffic to this or anything like that. It wasn't really intended to be that way or serve that purpose. Oh, sorry about that. That was a while ago. That was a half hour ago. I don't even remember what I was covering. And so all good. But if you know what it is that you were referring to, pop it in there and I'd be more than happy to answer it for you. Yeah, so this is a great question. This is an awesome question. So Brian asked, and this is right now, you're going to get the real gist. Now you're going to see the transparency of Todd in all its majestic glory right here and right now. So Brian asked, so how did I leverage the attractive solution with this workshop versus an irresistible proposition? So in the spirit of transparency, what I would say, and understand this, let me take a step back before I give you the answer so that you have some context to this, everybody. And this is important, so listen to me. So you've got to recognize that the things that we do on the front end are not necessarily the things that we do on the back end, right? And so when you're, crafting a front end campaign is very different than crafting a back end campaign. When you're talking to people that you have a relationship with and you have trust with, you've delivered the goods to before, it's very different when you're talking to people that don't know you from Adam. And so I have a very different mindset when crafting front end campaigns than back end campaigns. In the spirit of transparency, when it comes to the back end, I would say that, and when I do it, when I create the copy or write the copy for it, I would say that, for lack of a better phrase, I'm a bit more lazy. Like meaning I'm willing to, I'm on the back end, willing to leave out a number of elements that you can't leave out or should never leave out on the front end. So in the spirit of transparency, to answer your question directly, Brian, I would say that I was willing to base this entire promotion on, first of all, really doing this largely for top one, my highest level clients. And so I wasn't looking to the aim wasn't to sell thousands of people into this or anything like that. So I would say that I didn't develop an attractive solution. I started off just saying, hey, it's time for me to share the, A to Z copy, like my whole mindset, all the tricks, all the tactics, all the gambits, all the moves, all the triggers, all that stuff. And it is what it is. And so I didn't engineer an attractive solution meeting that criteria. And I would say that I presented a proposition that I wanted to present. And so I didn't do what I would do on the front end with a promotion. And that's why, a solution that is viable on the back end is not necessarily at all viable on the front end. Just like a proposition on the back end is not necessarily at all viable on the front end. And so to answer your question, again, just to be crystal clear, I would say I did neither with this. And was okay with that. Keep in mind, we didn't run traffic to this. There was no media spent on this, nothing like that at all. It was a back end for us. And so you're welcome. Yeah, and that's the thing, right, Ken, that, that in an ideal world, and I appreciate that, in an ideal world, like, look, in an ideal world, in a perfect world, and this is, a conversation for a different day, different workshop, but in an ideal world, and this was something that Mark Ford said to me over dinner, in an ideal world, you should be able to, on the back end, go to your tribe and say, I've got something helpful for you, and here is the offer for it. And they jump at it, right? Because you've built a relationship, because you've constantly delivered the goods, you've over delivered value. You should be able to do that. I would love to say that I can do all of our campaigns like that. I can't. But that is certainly the aim. It's very different from the front end, right? Very different from the front end. The back end, it's a completely different thinking, a completely different mentality than is the front end. The front end really is all about the offer first and foremost, the attractive solution, the irresistible proposition, the big idea. The reality is, done right on the back end, you don't need a big idea. Right? Like, that's the truth. Like, on back end campaigns, you don't need a big idea. You don't need a super whiz bang hook. Remember, they're higher on the awareness pyramid. The higher on the awareness pyramid you go, the more direct you can be in your marketing campaigns. And so, yeah. So hope that answers that question. So let me do this. Let me do this. And let me do this. And so now I want to talk about the campaign thesis. This is the buying belief, right? And I want to show you, I want to break this down. Those of you that have been through E5, you've heard this, just pay attention. I'm going to go through this quickly for everybody else. This is, so I said that there is one single belief that I always want prospects to have before I go into the offer. The aim of every marketing campaign that I create, the body of the campaign, is to establish that one belief. Everything that I do and say and show and present and demonstrate is there to do one thing and one thing only, and that is establish that one buying belief in the mind of the prospect. Like, I want you to think about it like this. I want you to recognize, gang, that I've said this before and I'll say it again, and take this to heart. Ponder this after the workshop. Ponder this tonight as you're resting up for tomorrow. And that is this, that I do not, when I sit down to craft a marketing campaign, I don't think like a salesperson at all. I'm not a salesperson. I don't think like a salesperson. I don't think like even like a marketer. I don't think like a copywriter. I think more like a prosecutor, and a prosecutor who is presenting a case to a jury. And the prosecutor wants that case to be an airtight, emotional, and logical case that leads the jury to one single conclusion. Every prosecutor, they're presenting a case, and they're ultimately leading the jury to, let's say, to one belief, to the belief that the defendant is guilty of the crime and should be punished to the full extent of the law. And so everything that the prosecutor does and says and shows and presents and demonstrates in some way, shape, or form is leading the jury methodically, one piece at a time, one step at a time, closer and closer to that one conclusion, right? The good prosecutors are not going off on these meandering paths. All they're doing is just stacking belief on top of belief, evidence on top of evidence that leads the jury to see, yep, the defendant is guilty and should be punished to the full extent of the law. And it's only when the prosecutor has led the jury to that conclusion, to the conclusion that the defendant is guilty and should be punished to the full extent of the law, that the prosecutor then gives their closing arguments and their call to action. Go into the deliberation room and find this defendant guilty, right? And so that's the same exact thing that I'm doing. That's the same exact thing that I am doing, right? I'm talking to our jury, right? Our jury is our prospects, our audience. There is one belief that I want that audience to have before I go into my closing arguments, my offer, and before I give them the call to action, to buy. And everything that I do and say and show and present is there to establish that one belief, that buying belief, just like the prosecutor. And I'm trying to present an airtight, rock solid, emotional and logical argument. And so what I want to share with you now is how you formulate that buying belief. What is that buying belief that you want to lead prospects to accept before your offer? What is it that you're trying to establish in the mind of the prospect, the one overarching buying belief? Understand that just like with the prosecutor is ultimately their ultimate aim, the ultimate belief is that the defendant is guilty and should be punished to the full extent of the law. That is the ultimate belief, the one buying belief, if you will, that they are trying to create in the mind of the jury. But along the way, there are other sub-beliefs that they're going to have to establish. Maybe they're going to have to establish the belief that the defendant had a motive. And so they're going to claim the defendant had a motive, and then they're going to offer proof, evidence, support of that. Then they're going to say the defendant was, right? So then they're going to establish in the mind of the jury the defendant had a motive. Okay. Next thing, maybe they have to establish the fact that the defendant had a violent tendency, right? And so they're going to claim that the defendant had violent tendency, and then they're going to show proof, evidence, support of that. And then they established that belief, and they might go methodically one step at a time, right? The defendant was at the scene of the crime. They're going to make that claim, and then they're going to give evidence, support, proof of that. Then they establish that belief, right? And so methodically, piece by piece, what they're doing is, right? So the defendant had a motive. Yep, I believe it. The defendant had a violent tendency. Yep, I believe it. The defendant was seen at the scene of the crime. Yep, I believe it. Boom, boom, boom. Check, check, check. When those things are checked off, right? When the right beliefs are checked off, they lead to, this guy's guilty. This guy is guilty and should be punished to the full extent of the law. And so everything that the prosecutor does is one at a time. Boom. Claim of a belief, proof, evidence, claim of a belief, proof, evidence, claim of a belief, proof, evidence. All together, once accepted, yep, check, 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 boom. Thesis accepted, right? Like, the guy's guilty, should be punished to the full extent of the law. That's when the prosecutor, closing argument, right? So as you can see, boom, 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 boom. For us, closing argument, offer, right? So here's how you can get it. Here's how you can do it, right? And so I want to show you how you formulate that, that exactly. Jerry Spence, great, couple of Jerry Spence books on the shelves back there. So I want to show you how you do that. Excuse me, how you formulate that. Simple. There are three pieces, right? There's a lot of different ways to potentially do this. This is the approach that I use. This is the approach that I train our clients on. There are three pieces to the campaign thesis. Number one is statement of superiority, right? Statement of superiority. We're going to claim superiority in some area for the mechanism. So we're basically going to claim that the best way, the fastest way, the easiest way, the most consistent way, the safest way, the cheapest way, whatever it may be, which we're going to talk about in just a second, to experience the primary promise is with the unique mechanism, is with this framework, this system, this approach, this methodology, right? This is ultimately how we're forming this thesis, this single statement that we're going to use as our North Star, as our guiding light. So I do this at the beginning to identify what is the one belief that I need my jury to have by the end of my case. What is the one belief that I need my prospects to have before I introduce the offer? I'm going to write it out as a campaign thesis. It's not copy. It's what I'm going to use, right, as my guiding light. Now, when I am writing copy, and we're using all the tactics and triggers and techniques and gambits and things that we're going to talk about, the language patterns tomorrow, it's all steering towards that North Star. Along the way, I'm prodding emotions. I'm establishing certain beliefs, right? I'm offering proof. I'm making claims. I'm stating benefits. I'm giving contrast, right? All leading to this one North Star, which is the acceptance of this campaign thesis. Everything that I'm doing, right, and why I'm doing it in some form or fashion is leading the prospect to the acceptance of this one statement, just like the prosecutor is doing. And so we've got the primary promise, which we've already talked about. We've got the unique mechanism, right, which we already talked about. I want to talk about the statement of superiority. And so this is rather simple, but there are some nuances to this. So number one, you've got to claim superiority in some aspect. in something, right? If you, it's either, you either got to claim superiority in terms of speed, in terms of ease, in terms of consistency, reliability, in terms of cost, in terms of effectiveness. You've got to claim superiority in something. How do you claim superiority in one or more of those areas? And that comes from your interrogation. That comes from your examination, right? You're going to know, like, do you feel that this is the best because it's the easiest? Is this the fastest? Is this the most effective? Is this the most consistent? Is it the most reliable? What is it? It might be one of those. It might be two of those, right? But you've got to identify if it's superior in terms of speed, then it's the fastest. The fastest has to be superior in terms of speed. If it wasn't superior in terms of speed, then it couldn't be the fastest, right? It would just be fast. It wouldn't be the fastest. If it's the fastest, that means it's superior in terms of speed. If it's the easiest, that means it's superior in terms of ease. If it's the most reliable, that means you're claiming superiority in reliability, right? If it's the safest, right, that means you're claiming superiority in terms of safety. If it's the cheapest, that means that you are claiming superiority in terms of cost, right? And so you have to identify what is it that you are claiming superiority for. And then it's just a matter of claiming it in this campaign thesis. Now you have to understand one other subtle point, that you can certainly have more than one. So you can have the fastest and easiest way to lose 30 pounds from your waist in the next 10 weeks, right? Like you could have something like that, the easiest and fastest, but keep in mind that whatever it is that you are claiming in terms of superiority in here, we have to then prove and establish in the body of your copy, And so you have to understand that if you say it's the easiest, fastest, and most effective way to blah, 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 blah. See, understanding that claiming superiority, taking those things is not just a matter of what would they be most excited about? Well, they'd be most excited about all of them, right? They'd be most excited about it's the fastest, easiest, most effective way to safely, right? Like the safest way to blah, blah, blah. They'd be most excited about all of those. But it makes your job that much more difficult because now you have to prove, why is it the fastest? Why is it the easiest? Why is it the most effective? Why is it the safest? You have to prove all that. Remember, this campaign thesis. This is the belief that we are going to establish in the mind of the prospect before we present the offer. And so if you claim that it's the fastest, easiest, and most effective, well, then, like, in order to establish that belief, you have to show what makes it the fastest, easiest, and most effective. You got to show what makes it the fastest, what makes it the easiest, what makes it the most effective. And so my point is that the more of these aspects of superiority you choose, the longer the campaign is going to be, the more things you're going to have to prove. And so you only want to claim superiority in the areas that you are confident you can prove. Don't claim superiority in an area that you can't prove. And so, so G said, is it better to stick to one claim of superiority? Not necessarily. No. I would say that it is better to stick to the claims of superiority in the areas that you feel overconfident you can prove, right? And so the ones where you're like, I could definitely prove this. I can show this. Like I can explain why, right? I'm going to show you a simple way to offer proof in just a second. And then you're going to see how this is carried over tomorrow into copy. And so let me show you what this looks like. So this is the kind of the template that we use with our E5 students. The statement of priority way to primary promise is with unique mechanism. The most effective way to get new buyers every day is with the E5 method, right? This is an example. The most effective way to get new buyers every day is with the E5 method. Now you'll notice in here, in this example, the most effective way to get new buyers every day is with the E5 method. I didn't say the easiest way. So I don't have to talk about, right? If I'm just establishing the belief in the mind of the marketplace that the most effective way to get new buyers every single day is with the E5 method, I didn't claim that it was the easiest way to get new buyers every day. I didn't say that. I didn't say that in this context that it was the fastest way to get new buyers every day. I didn't claim that it was the safest way or anything like that. All I claimed was most effective. Right. And so all I've got to prove is what makes it the most effective. I don't have to prove anything about speed. I don't have to prove anything about ease. And so And so this is an example of, right, if the most effective way to get new buyers every day is with the E5 method. And so if this is what, if this was the thesis that I came up with for a campaign that I was going to talk about, that I was going to write copy for the E5 method, everything that I do and say and show and present and demonstrate in some way, shape, or form is going to further the belief that the E5 method and the way the E5 method works makes it more effective than any other method, process, system out there for acquiring new buyers every day. And I don't have to talk about speed. I don't have to talk about ease. I don't have to talk about anything else. And so, right, it's all about what you claim in here, right? And remember, you have to claim superiority in some area because that's what people want, the superior solution. And so if it's not superior in some way, shape, or form, then why would prospects want it? And so over here next is, I just want to show you what it would look like if you were bringing in a catalyst. If you're using a catalyst when it's appropriate, it's very similar, but with that additional catalyst. The statement of superiority way to take advantage of catalysts so you can primary promise is with unique mechanism. The most effective way to leverage the iOS tracking update so you can get flawless marketing metrics is with pixel refreshing. Right. So all you're doing is, right. And then this would become if I was presenting or putting together copy what was I going to say? Copy for this, right? A campaign for this, everything that I do with my copy, like the overall timeline trajectory of the message is going to be there to demonstrate that the most effective way to leverage, to use, to overcome, to take advantage of the iOS tracking update, which is the catalyst in this example, so that you can get flawless marketing metrics is with this unique mechanism. Like this becomes my guiding light, my North Star, right? And so this is how you start off with, that belief. So if we pause for a second, and if I step out of this for 1 second, so you can see how far we've come just at this point, right? Even though, 60% or whatever it is, 60% through these slides at this moment of today's slides, day one slides, understand what we talked about. We talked about like why you need to understand, right? Like why you need to understand your prospect, why you need to understand their problem, what type of problem it is, why you need to understand the pain, why you need to understand that they view the symptoms as the problem itself. We talked about how what we're ultimately doing is in the copy, you are showing them that you've got something different, a different way to solve their problem so they can feel the way they want. And that different way is superior to every other way. That becomes the thesis that we use as our guiding star, our North Star, if you will. And then everything that we do and say and show and present, I'm going to show you how to do it, say it, show it, present it, to disarm your prospect, to slip under the radar, not to trigger that hype thing, right? All that. But all that is leading to the prospect accepting that buying belief. I want them to accept that buying belief, right? Understand this. Check this out. So let me do this. Let me show you this. Let's go back here. Let's go back here. You see this right here? So let's take this. Right? So this down at the bottom, this example right here. So the most effective way to get new buyers every day is with the E5 method. So understand this, check this out. So I said that, this is the belief that I want them to have before I go into the offer. And this is the same thing that you want to do. Now, I want you to understand the enormous freaking power of this. I want you to get why this is so important and why this works like freaking gangbusters when it's done right, when you use the stuff that I'm going to give you tomorrow. Because what I want you to understand is this, that when I have led my prospect to see, right, and I know they want to get new buyers and they want to get new buyers every day, and they're tired of struggling and they're tired of seeing no sales and they're tired of wasting money on traffic that doesn't convert, and they finally want to be able to drive more traffic, to recoup all their money from traffic, to grow their customer list, to make more money, blah, 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 all that, right? Right. They want to do that. And when I show them and prove to them through my body copy in a way that is believable, that's understandable, that is emotional, that is logical, that demonstrates what makes it different and superior in that it is most effective. And I lead prospects to see that the most effective way for them to get new buyers every day is with the E5 method, this unique mechanism. Before I've ever gone into the offer, and this is same applies for you when you do this, before you ever go into the offer, they want the unique mechanism. People, they want the E5 method. They want the E5 method because they now understand, they've accepted, they see, they get on an emotional and intellectual level, on an emotional and logical level, what makes the E5 method the most effective way to get new buyers every day, which they want. And so now they want the E5 method. And the beauty is when done right, remember, your unique mechanism is only available from you. They cannot get it anywhere else. You have just created a marketing message that creates an all roads lead to you, right? They now want the unique mechanism. They see the value in the unique mechanism. They see it as the most effective way to get new buyers every day. And so they want the unique mechanism. Now, when you segue into the offer, they are pre-sold. They're pre-sold on the mechanism. They're pre-sold on the mechanism. Your offer is their vehicle to get the unique mechanism, to benefit from the unique mechanism, to use the unique mechanism. And your offer is the only place that they can get that unique mechanism. So you've created an all roads lead to you. You've pre-sold them. You've turned their desire for a result, their desire to get new buyers every day, into demand for your product, because you took that desire and created demand for the mechanism, and the mechanism is only available in your offer. And now when you wrap it and present it in an irresistible proposition, that's why you're able to see double-digit sales conversions. And so that is the power of what it is that we talked about. And so, and so let me see here. And so let's see something here. I just want to see, let's see this. Let's do this. So we're just about at 5 o'clock. The next section that we're going to go into is what we're going to do is we're going to stop now, and we will just cruise like crazy tomorrow. And so the next section that we're going to go into is hooks, themes, and ideas. We're going to go through avoiding the categorical imperative. We're going to go through mental opt-out. We're going to go through the things that the hook needs to trigger. We're going to go through the hook rule of one. We're going to go through the foundation of a hook, the hook checklist. We're going to go through finding the seeds of hooks. We are going to go through, let's see, we're going to go through the lead objective. We're going to go through the big 4 feelings for the lead. We're going to go through, we've got a lot to cover. And so, yeah, we're going to, cause I want to, the hook section, let me see something. You guys want to do one more? You want to do one short section? Want to do one short section, or you want to stop for the day? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, cool. You got it. Okay. So I'm going to skip ahead, and I'm going to skip ahead. So Ken said, let's not rush tomorrow. We're not going to rush. Don't worry. This is a short section because this is a big overview. And so what I want to do is, I'll show you my screen. So let's do this. All right. So check this out. I want to talk to you about the lead. Now, we're not going to go through, the lead is obviously, as you know, the first 350, 400, 500 words. I'm not going to go through all the different lead types, because what I'm going to show you or give you is my go-to lead approach. There's a lot of different things that you can do in terms of the different lead type from direct to indirect, story to offer. Like there's a lot of different lead types. The reality is I'm going to show you my go-to on the front end. And I want to point out a couple of key things. So when we're talking about the lead here, what we are talking about is we're talking about the opening of your campaign. I don't care whether it's a video sales letter, whether it's a long form sales letter, whether it's a webinar, right? There's always a beginning. There's always an opening. There's always a lead. And the role of the lead is very specific. There is a very specific task of the lead. I already shared with you guys and gals that the head looks to justify what the heart wants, right? The head looks to justify what the heart wants. And so we always in marketing speak to the heart first. We always quote unquote sell to or market to or talk to or convince, persuade the heart first, because the head will look for justification for what the heart wants. And so the number one objective of the lead, the opening of your campaign, is to set the emotional hook, What I mean by set the emotional hook is get your prospect emotionally excited. And they get emotionally excited by the idea of a different way to give them the result that they want. Don't overthink it. Do not overcomplicate it. When I say set the emotional hook, we're talking about getting your prospect emotionally excited, emotionally sold, emotionally bought in, right? Emotionally bought in. I want them to say, this sounds amazing. Now prove to me that it'll work and prove to me that it'll work for me. That's ultimately what I want the prospect to say to themselves or to be thinking at the end of our lead. This sounds amazing. Like this sounds killer. This sounds off the charts. Like if this is legit, I'm sold, but prove to me that it'll work, man. And prove to me that it'll work for me. That's the type of thinking, right? And so that doesn't come about from a logical, rational argument. That comes about from what I would call, and I think it was, it might've been Michael Drummond actually on here who shared it this way. That comes about from presenting what I would call, what we now call the elevator pitch for your campaign, or really the elevator pitch for your mechanism and the payoff, right? For this, I've got a different thing and here's what it'll do for you. And here's what it'll do for you. And here's what it'll do for you, right? Like all we are doing is teasing the most exciting benefits of the mechanism. We're not giving an argument. We're not giving rationale. We're not explaining how it works, right? We're taking the most exciting stuff about the mechanism and what it does. Remember, the most exciting stuff about the mechanism, the most exciting stuff in general is always about what it will do for the prospect. We're taking the most exciting stuff about the mechanism, right? And we're bringing 2, 3, 4 of them up front. And we're leading with that. We're promising something big. We're promising a transformation. We're teasing more, right? We're telling them what it doesn't require of them, right? You'll see this in just a second, like a real example of this. And ultimately, at the end of the lead, like I said, I just want the prospect to say, wow, this sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. Now prove to me that it'll work and prove to me that it'll work for me. That's it. That's all we are trying to do. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm not trying to convince. I'm not trying to prove. I'm not trying to establish the campaign thesis. I'm not trying to do any of that. I just want them emotionally like, this sounds amazing. Oh my gosh, this sounds like, right? They're not convinced. They're not convinced. They're not sold, but they're emotionally bought in. Right? Like the very first thing that we got to do is get them to emotionally buy in. And what I like to say, the analogy that I've used for years is the reason why I say it as setting the emotional hook is because if you've ever gone fishing, I've told the story before, but like fishing, like when you feel, when if you go freshwater fishing and you feel, oh man, there's a bass on the end of this bad boy or whatnot, and you just start reeling in, what ends up happening, which happened to me many times when I first, right? You start reeling in and all of a sudden the line goes slack and the fish lets the bait, the lure out of its mouth. Why? Because before you start reeling in, you've got to set the hook. You got to set the hook, and then you reel in. You set the hook, then reel in. You don't reel in before setting the hook. Reeling in our context is presenting the argument, is giving the logical, rational support. You don't start reeling in. You don't start giving the evidence. You don't start giving the rationale. You don't start giving the logical support. You don't start delivering those elements until you set that emotional hook, until you get them excited emotionally about what this can mean and do for them. Wow, this sounds awesome. Now, prove to me that it'll work, and prove to me that it will work for me. Now, a simple way to think about this, right? And if we talked about nothing else, you could go legitimately, you can go and do this, because there's no real science to the lead per se, right? Teasing the most exciting benefits, right, of the mechanism. But a copywriter or a copy chief from Agora by the name of Kyle Milligan, I got to give credit where credit is due. I think he articulated what you want to cover in the lead. He talks about this in the context of the entire campaign, but this is really most appropriate for you guys in the lead. He summed it up like this. What you want to convey, or what you want to tap into with the teasing of the benefits up front, is new, easy, safe, and big. And what he's really talking about here is, right, like, this is a new and different way. This is new and different way from what it is that you've tried before. So we're immediately answering the question, what's different about this, right? A new and different way to experience the outcome, what we've already talked about. He also said, right, that secondary to that is only. That is when you have if you have an unaddressed root root problem, like if you have a right, like, this is the only way to do that. This is the only way to take advantage of XYZ. This is the only way to solve elemental P. So it could be either or. I tend to look for new and different, right? New and different. It's got to be in the lead. Next is easy. All right. Easy. Another version of that, the kind of the sister to that, is anybody. Anybody could do this. And so, right, those two are not necessarily the same, right? But oftentimes, right, like, I might not be able to say that that the E5 method is easy, because it's not easy. And so I'm not going to say that it's easy if it's not easy, but it's certainly something that anybody can do, right? Any marketer can use this. Any marketer willing to put in the effort can reap the rewards of this. And so you want some form or fashion of either easy or anybody can do this in the lead, right? Safe and predictable, meaning that this isn't a fly by night thing. Like, this is producing results. You can bank on this. You can rely on this. You can expect that this is going to continue to work for you. Safe in their world comes from, he comes from the financial investing or financial publishing background. And so that's more, safe investment. This is more about, this is a reliable process that'll produce consistent results for you. It's not like a maybe, it's not an if. In other words, you can feel confident that you will experience success from this. And then the last one is big and fast. And I would say that, right, it's either a big result, big outcome, big transformation, big change, right? Or you talk about speed, right? Like how quickly you can experience results. And so this idea of new, easy, safe, and big, when I go back to this bad boy over here, think of it as your elevator pitch, teasing out the most exciting benefits. And that's all we're doing in the lead. We're not explaining, like, we're not getting into the argument portion. We're not getting into the logical portion. All we're doing is setting the emotional hook, and we're leveraging in some capacity these big four feelings, right? Or a mix of these. Now I'm going to show you an example of a campaign that I wrote that lives this out, that lives and breathes this. I'll show you one example. I'll probably show you another example tomorrow, just to drive home this point. But before I do, I want to make one additional point, because you're going to see this in the example that I'm about to show you. This is a quote from Winston Churchill, and it says, if you have an important point to make, don't try to be subtle or clever. Use a pile driver. Hit the point once, then come back and hit it again, then hit it a third time, a tremendous whack. The reason why I shared this in here is because what you're going to find in your lead really in your campaigns in general. And we're going to cover this tomorrow. I'm going to remind you of this tomorrow, but we have the idea of repetition. Repetition is good. Being repetitious is not. So being repetitious, I'm going to talk about tomorrow, right? Because that's word choice. And right, repetition is good. What am I saying here? I'm saying that you want to continue to drive home the main point, the main promise, the main outcome, the main idea over and over and over and over and over. Don't think just because you said it once that that's enough and that they're going to get the point. You drive it home over and over and over. The key is that we want to leverage repetition so that we never veer too far away from the thing that is most exciting to them, but we don't want to be repetitious. Repetitious comes from saying the same thing over and over. Repetition means we're driving home the same idea. Being repetitious means we're driving home the same idea with the same words. And so we can drive home the same idea without being repetitious by changing the words that we use. And so what I want to show you is I want to show you an example. Now, some of you maybe have seen this, maybe have gone through this. I'm going to show you this bad boy, and then I'm going to take questions, and then you guys are outie. And so let me bring this up for you because I want to walk you through this very quickly. And I've done this walkthrough for my own team. I've done this walkthrough a number of times. And so I'm going to do this quick, but I want to show you guys. Let's do this. Let's do this. So number one, and I'm going to do this very quickly. So number one, what I want to show you guys is this. So I want to show you that if you look at this right here, see where it says, hi, my name is Todd Brown right here. This is the, this, I would say right here is the end of the lead, right? So this is the end of the lead right here. Once I introduce myself, then we're going into the introduction and then the credentializing or the why you should listen to me kind of thing here. And so you'll see that that I never introduce myself at the start of any front end campaign. And so how do I turn this thing off? There we go. So I never introduce myself at the start of any campaign. Why? Because they don't care about that. They don't know me from Adam. And so what they want to know is what is this going to do for me? I need to set the emotional hook before I credentialize myself because they don't care what I know or who I am or what I've done until they know about what this is going to do for them. Now, if you look at this, what you're going to see over here, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's see if I can bring up this crazy color over here. So what you'll see is, let's do this. So a few things that I want you to see over here. This campaign, I don't know, this could be, I don't even know, a year and a half old or something like that. Maybe now at this point, I don't even remember, but I want you to see a couple things. Number one, notice the word new, easy, fast, right? Over here, fast, over here, me showing in just days, over here, taking those big four and putting it up front. Number two, what I want you to see over here is I want you to see this idea that you see this, borrow a bestseller. This is the idea of, this is an implied unique mechanism, right? And then this is, call it, payoff over here. And so we've got unique mechanism and we've got payoff. And then you see this over here. Let me just do this. Let me do this. 1 second. All right, let me do this. Where is it? Whoops. Let me do this right here. If you can see this, right? Anybody, this will work for you no matter what product or service you sell. And by the way, I think if I'm not mistaken, did I see Kyle do a breakdown of this campaign and that's what got him on my radar? I can't remember. But what I want you to see here is this. Check this out. So here is the beginning, this really too is all the lead, but I want you to see this right here. So this is where we're going to start. right? And you're going to see that it goes right to here. So a very short lead. I don't know how many words this is, but I want you to notice what it is that I'm doing here. So number one, this may sound crazy, but it's working like nothing I've seen before. And so, right, we're going to talk about this tomorrow. I've got a first sentence that is incomplete. It starts to serve as this, quote unquote, slippery slope. It's working like nothing I've seen before. Also, if you scroll back here, you can see a couple things. There's curiosity at play because they don't know what this, what does that mean? Borrow a bestseller, but it's working like nothing I've seen before. What is working like nothing I've seen before? Got to continue to read on. Choose any best. Now watch what I'm doing here. This may sound crazy. It's working like nothing I've seen before. Choose any best-selling book from any author and you can borrow it and fill your business with new customer sales in as little as 5 days. Notice now, by the way, that I said the same thing. I said the same idea right here, and I'm already saying it right here again. I'm just saying it in a different way. I'm not using the same exact words, but I'm communicating the same idea over here. Choose any best-selling book from any. I got a little bit more specific in as little as 5 days. Speed, right? So speed over here. And now I'm unpacking it more. And you keep 100% of the money. You can use a borrowed bestseller campaign with new books, old books, classics, even books which just hit the shelves. It doesn't matter. Pick any one, borrow it, and fill your business with a surge of fresh buyers. So look at this, right? Flooded with new customers, thousands of new buyers, really saying the same thing, just saying it a little differently. Fill your business with new customer sales, saying it a little differently. Same idea over here. Fill your business with a surge of fresh buyers. Repetition, not being repetitious. Borrow it and fill your bit. And you can do it for as long as you want to continue to drive more and more sales. Start small, start big, however you want. The borrowed bestseller campaign is the perfect advertising method for you if you're short on time, don't have a product yet, don't feel like creating a new product, or just want the hefty credibility boost of borrowing a bestseller. This will get you new customer sales like nothing you've seen before. And you can do this no matter what niche you're in, what product or service you sell, or whether you're a new entrepreneur or grizzled veteran. Anybody. You don't need an email list. You don't need any joint venture partners. Oops. You don't need any social media following. You don't need any special connections or anyone's permission or approval. In fact, best-selling authors will love you for it. Best part of all, launching a borrowed bestseller is so easy and fast. You can start seeing sales in as little as a few days, but you may want to jump on this now before one of your competitors beats you to the punch and borrows the perfect bestseller for your type of business. Boom. End of lead. Hi, my name is Todd Brown. You'll notice that I didn't prove anything in here. I didn't explain anything in here. All I did over here was tease the benefits, was set the emotional hook. All I wanted folks to say right at this point was, wow, this sounds awesome. Like, show me how this works. Show me that this will work for me. Like, all right, give me the details. Give me the deets, so to speak, right? Give me the deets. Let me know, show me how this thing is going to work. Prove to me that this thing is going to do what you say it is. I'm curious. I've never heard this before. There's a lot of curiosity at play because I don't know what this bad boy is, right? There's big payoff. There's a lot of, grow your business fast, new customer sales in just days. It's easy and fast to get thousands of customers. This will work for you no matter what you do. And then, right, it's working like crazy. Over here, you keep all the dough. You can use it for almost any kind of book. Fill your business with a surge of buyers. Do it for as long as you want. Start big, start small. You see how all it's doing is just creating more and more excitement. And that's it. That's all it is doing, is creating more and more. How do I get rid of this thing? Gosh. Okay. And so hopefully that makes sense. I know that there are questions. I'm going to do one more thing here. I believe that I'm just going to cover this real quick because this is it. And then I'll take the questions. I already said story leads can be killer, but they're usually either boom or bust. Beware. The prospect must be able to see themselves in the story and done correctly. Done correctly, a story lead isn't just a pattern interrupt. Problem solution lead. If you're not going to go with my go-to, which is, you can see it's not a story lead, nor is it problem solution lead. When you use a problem solution, when you start with the problem, when you're dealing with unresolved, distress, when you're starting with pain, and you start with the problem, you agitate the problem, and then you get to the solution. Don't labor on the problem. In other words, the mistake that I see folks make when they use a problem solution lead is they stay on the problem way too long. Hit the problem, agitate the problem, meaning show the prospect where the problem is going to lead them if they do not resolve it or do not take care of it properly, and then get to the solution. The hope comes from the solution. The prospect already knows the problem that they have. You just want to let them know that you know it. You want to agitate it a little bit, show them that, right, if they don't fix it, what could happen, and then you want to get to the solution. So just because it's problem, agitate, and then solve doesn't mean that it's 33%. You want to hit the problem fast, agitate it fast, get to the solution, and the bulk of your time you want to be focused on the solution. And so with that, let me do this. Let me go over here and let me see this. And so okay. So are there any nuance changes for the lead if it's written for a sales letter? If it's a written sales letter or a VSL? No, I don't. I mean, look, could you make the case for nuances? I'm sure I could make the case for nuances, but I wouldn't overthink it. Like, the reality is no. The reality is that many VSL long form sales letters, like when they, are identical. Like, there's no difference. The copy is identical. And so, no, I don't think that you need to have any nuance differences in terms of a VSL and a sales letter. I would just look at a VSL as a different way of delivering the same copy. And so really, and that's how I look at it. And so, do you provide any testimonials in the lead to back up the emotional copy, or do you feel testimonials are too logical? So it's a great question. So let me answer this with a nuance. And I'm going to give you a fill in the blank, Nadine, a fill in the blank template, if you will, of the go-to lead. And so when you get the PDFs and all that on Monday, you're going to get the fill in the blank. I hate to call it template because I don't want you to, but it is the perfect, funnel openings, the perfect lead. It's what it is that I go to all the time, which is I'm going to introduce, there's a new and different way. And there's a new and different way. It's true. There's a new and different way for you to XYZ. But do I provide testimonial? So number one, I may offer proof in the lead, a single proof point, or allude to a single proof point, but I'm not going to offer a testimonial. And so, right, a testimonial, which is typically from a customer, like I save testimonials, proof points, and this we're gonna talk about this when we talk about the difference between over here, the difference between, you guys can't see this, and so I'll just show this real quick. The difference between social proof and claim proof. And so a testimonial is social proof that we offer in the, that we present during the offer portion. And so we typically don't use social proof, not the typical social proof or typical testimonials throughout the marketing portion. So, but I may offer proof. If I make a huge claim, right? Like if I made a tremendous claim that early on, a tremendous claim, a tremendous promise, like early on, that I know the prospect is going to be like, what? That's ridiculous, right? Like, what was I going to say? Then I may allude to or reference a proof point, right? Like, like I might, this is the, it's true. There's a new way to lose a, a crazy amount of weight. In fact, it's being reported you can lose up to 80 pounds in the next month. Even Harvard is calling this, a crazy breakthrough. And that's not all. You can also blah, 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 blah. So I may use a proof point up front if I'm making a claim that I think the prospect is going to go, no way, like there's no way that that's true. That's ridiculous. That's nuts. That's huge. I may offer a proof point. That proof point is almost never a testimonial, because a testimonial is typically tied to the offer section. A testimonial from a client who's talking about the experience with a product, I'm going to use that strategically when I'm talking about the product. When I'm making claims about the mechanism, I'm going to offer proof about the mechanism. And so claim proof and social proof are two different things. We're going to get into that tomorrow. And so I hope that answers the question. I would not bring a testimonial up front. I'm not going to, I don't want look, let me do this. Let me do one other thing real quick. Let me show you one other thing just as a tease, and we're going to come back to this tomorrow. But if you look at this, right? So this may sound like, no, right? It's crazy. It's working like nothing. You saw this lead. Now look, I go through credentialize. This thing, you see the bar, it works every time. You can instantly do this. You instantly do this. You enjoy this. You gain this. You get this. It's a little known customer generating move quietly used by the big dogs. Just as a side note, what is a little customer generating move? The borrow a bestseller. You'll see over here, right? Borrowed bestseller campaign. This borrowed bestseller campaign, borrowing a bestseller, is the unique mechanism. And now if you look at this, right, it's used by the big dogs. I wish I could say I invented it. I didn't. I stumbled across it. It's used by some of the biggest mailers. Monster List. Here's an example. Here are more examples. Here's an example, an example. Why am I showing you guys this right now? I'm showing you guys this because if you look at this campaign, right, they simply borrow them. They like them. Watch this. They're using a borrowed bestseller to sell the books just a bit below full retail. Think about it. There's no writing a product, right? No, the positioning, you get PR and buzz already created. Most of the copy's already written for you. If that's not a beautiful marketing opportunity, I don't know what is. What is a beautiful marketing opportunity? Using the borrowed bestseller campaign, right? I was stunned to see there are hundreds of bestsellers you can borrow right now on every topic. All of these bad boys, most of which on Amazon are $24. You can get them for 50 cents to $3. Here is examples, proof, right? I actually use this approach with a campaign for Robert Cialdini. You don't need any, blah, blah, blah. You don't need any special connections. Here, this is an example of, it was selling on Amazon. I was able to get it right for, $3. I sold it for $16.95 as part of a thing. It worked so well. It brought me customers for the next 11 weeks straight. Here is my buddy Russell Brunson saying it's genius. You can generate now all of this time, right? What am I talking about? What am I convincing the audience of? I'm not talking about the product. I'm not pitching a product. What am I talking about? I'm getting buy-in on the mechanism. I'm getting buy-in on this idea of borrowing a bestseller and using a bestseller to work. And I'm giving proof of who else uses it and what you get with this, and that this is accessible no matter what market you're in. And here are examples of that, right? And you don't need any special connections. And here's the result that I got when I did it. And here was the result that we had. And here was the praise that we got. And right, like if you're thinking how to do this, it's simple. It's 3 steps. This is how you can use it, what you can do with it. Here's examples. If you are, you can borrow a fitness bestseller or personal development or investing. If you're in this market, a relationship bestseller, if you're in this market, or this. Fact is, no matter what product or service, there's opportunities here. What am I doing? Borrowed bestseller campaign. I'm convincing of the mechanism, not the product. I'm not pitching a product. I'm getting buy-in on the mechanism, right? And these opportunities are available to you right now. This is selling for $18.77. You can get it for $3. This one, $13.65, $1.50. All these examples right here. So here's what to do now. Now I go into the offer, right? And so now here's your chance to get this, right? Now I go into the actual product. But up to this point right here, you can look at the little scroll bar down here, right? Up to this point, all the way down, all of this was simply about the unique mechanism. All I was doing was getting buy-in on the unique mechanism. I set the emotional hook in the lead right up to this point right here. introduced myself, why you should listen to me, and then I went through and I proved what makes this an exciting and massive opportunity to grow your business, and who's using it, and how it's being used, and the beauty, the benefits of this bad boy, and what it can do for you, and how it's all accessible to you right now, and then I went through and I gave the offer. And so exactly, Mike said, he said it perfectly. I'm convincing of the mechanism, not the product. Before I I want to get buy-in on the mechanism, like I said earlier, because once I get buy-in on the mechanism, I have pre-sold the product, because the only place that they could get the mechanism is the product. The difference is that when I'm getting buy-in on the mechanism, I'm not pitching a product. So it doesn't require me to sell. It doesn't require me to pitch. So the prospect sales filter isn't up. Right? Prospect sales filter isn't up because I'm not talking about a product. I'm talking about a method. And I'm basically just trying to say, like, look, here's a great method. Here's a different way for you to do XYZ, for you to reap XYZ. Let me prove to you that this is a great method, right? I'm not trying to sell you a product here, right? I'm convincing you of a method. Then when I convince you of the method, I'm able to say, and like, that's why I decided to put together this training. And so if you want this, if you want to learn how to do this, here's your opportunity to get it. And that's why you get prospects that are thankful for the opportunity to buy when you do it that way, and say, and so I'll credit you, Mike, for that. And so I dig it. And so Jan said, Todd, how would this work if I would apply this on a landing page for an opt-in to a VSL webinar or resource for someone that is going to book a call, booking a call? Would I still use a lead and the proof with the bullet points? So no. So what I want you to think about, what I want you to understand is that's a bit of strategy, Jan. And so think about this. Every page has its purpose. Every page serves a role. The page of an opt-in or registration is to get the qualified opt-in or registration. In other words, we're not just trying to get the email opt-in for the sake of getting the email opt-in. We want the right folks to opt in, and we want those folks to know what it is that they're opting in for. And we want those folks to opt in because they want the thing that we're talking about. And so the opt-in page is just about really presenting for the most part, this isn't, and every industry is a little different depending on what's out there, but is the promise and the mechanism. Like, the reality is, I love ultra streamlined lead gen pages. They can be ultra streamlined when you're able to make when you're able to, like, you're able to communicate your hook, your promise, and your mechanism in a single headline. The reality is, you don't need a whole bunch of copy. When the idea is right, when the promise is right, and when there's a mechanism behind there, you don't need a whole bunch of copy. Most of the time I see, honestly, the more copy that gets added to an opt-in page, the more likely there is to be copy that talks the prospect out of opting in. The more likely there is to be copy that makes the prospect say, oh, I know what they're talking about. Oh, I've heard that. Right. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow when we talk about avoiding the categorical imperative, how, like, you want to avoid mental opt-out. And so you want to prevent that mental opt-out, meaning you don't want prospects to feel like, I've seen this, I've heard this. And so the likelihood is, the more copy that you add to a page, the more likely you are to say something that's going to talk a prospect out of opting in. We're talking about the opt-in page. And so I'm a big fan of going with, streamlined opt-in pages, oftentimes with a headline complex and a call to action button, honestly. And so there you go. That is all she wrote for today. Little bit over. Appreciate you guys hanging out to do that extra session. So rest up. Tomorrow, we're going to be back here at 9:30. We're going to go 9:30 again to probably 5:30-ish. No doubt. Tomorrow, we've got a tremendous amount to cover. We're going to cover a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't cover today. And then we're going to get into all the stuff all the triggers, the language patterns. We're really going to start, and we're going to focus on, word choice, sentence structure. We're going to focus on what word choice makes for good copy, effective copy. Like, now we're going to, tomorrow is where the rubber meets the road. And so now we're going to start to write copy with this foundation of today and we're going to cover stuff in the morning, the foundational stuff. Then we're going to start to write copy, and it's all going to rest back on these foundational principles. But you're going to see tomorrow, like, again, word choice, sentence structure, flow, language patterns, framing, some tactical wizardry, if you will. And so you're in for a treat. And then, of course, if you haven't marked it on your calendar, mark it now. Monday night from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time is our open Q&A. That's when you'll be able to just fire away. Like, I can't wait for that. No slides, just us, me, you, questions, answers, good stuff, good gems. And so you guys and gals are outie. Proud of you for hanging in so long. Not an easy thing to do with me talking at lightning pace, throwing stuff out at you, but I'm proud of you guys and gals. I will see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Let's rock and roll. Everybody have an amazing night. God bless you guys. See you tomorrow.